It's totally cool.
It's like
That's why I left South Dakota. So I'm Gina. Hi, Kyle. So this is a boom stand that will work. What I was hoping for you to have, because it looks big, and it's not good because the microphone. So that's why.
yes.
Tabletop or drum.
Yeah. So the thing is, to reflect that it was a unanimous nay.
So you want to start with your
And don't worry, speaking of where what's happening,
Okay,
don't
so-
make mistakes. People don't make motions complicated, and if you're reading for your first one, this is already complicated.
Patrice. And it'll be okay.
Can you figure out if they're...
Don't worry, if you just power through.
Normal size.
We'll all know what you're talking about and clarify if necessary.
That's why Jay's not a fighter pilot. So now you can take your mic and leave it on, and I don't know if it's gonna work because this is a normal mic clip. This is a rack.
I was trying to get a lot of people to remember their motions. Do you have your?
Working on it. Jimmy Buffett. Last time I think Jimmy Buffett, he died the next day.
Yeah. And then we.
Nick and I did it together.
Oh yes.
But you always like it.
I do. I don't know what I would do if I was.
I know, I don't, we you're not busy,
So like, it'll make that. Yeah. No, I will bring a plug-in.
Shame, 'cause I don't think
So y'all.
I'm very tired.
Everything. I was running late, so I didn't wear a coat. I made a brilliant decision. No regret.
No clip, sorry.
Great.
How's it going? Best of luck with that.
I know it's really gross, so that's
like this. Mine? Lean forward. There you go, you look great. Thank you. Okay. Too many. What's up?
I just got one. No, I literally, I have no more.
It is, we'll explain it.
I made sure.
Hey, when did you send out the agenda? Was that?
That's what we're gonna do.
Does it start?
I've been waiting since Friday. Yeah, we have Friday. It's Monday.
Did it come from the clerk or come from Sadie? Come from Sadie?
Aside from the wife.
Okay, you know what, that probably was the Spanish in the woods.
Not yet.
Time 7:01, I call this session the Whitewater Student Government to order. If you're able to rise along with me, recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Carter,
Present.
Senator Irwin,
Present.
Senator Esserman, Present, Senator Gross, Present, Senator Houston,
Here.
Senator Coleman,
Present.
Senator Michael,
Present.
Senator Miller,
Here.
Senator Tracus,
Present.
Senator Purnell,
Present.
Senator Schmidt,
Present.
Senator Wheaton,
Present.
Speaker Wilson.
Present. Today of accessibility, we're going to be trying something a little new today. We're going to have microphones, so for senators, if you're going to speak, we'll probably have one Director Smith or Parliamentarian Irwin running you a microphone. It'll help with the WebEx sound and make sure that all those who may be hearing impaired kind of have better audio at the meeting. So with that, we will move on to the, I'm going to have to quiet down, I'm very used to yelling, by golly. With that, we will move on to special orders, starting with Senate oath of office. If you were elected to a Senate seat, or rather appointed to a Senate seat last meeting, please join me up at the front and take the oath of office. Given you have been chosen by the students of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater as a senator on this student government, understanding that you have been chosen to perform such an active and important role, do you accept the position of senator and all the responsibilities, duties, and privileges it will include? If so, say, "We will to the best of our ability."
We will to the best of our ability.
Wonderful. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Tyler Gutzel,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to fulfill the obligations and responsibilities of my office,
to fulfill the obligations and responsibilities of my office,
to be knowledgeable of
to be knowledgeable of
and uphold the WSG Constitution,
and uphold the WSG Constitution,
the WSG standing rules,
the WSG standing rules,
and university policies,
and university policies,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the three newest senators of the Whitewater Student Government. Wonderful. And with that, we will move on to the appointment of one Drumlin District seat. Is there anyone in the gallery tonight interested in running for a Drumlin District seat? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none, wonderful. With that, we'll move on to the appointment of 6 off-campus district seats. Is there anyone in the gallery tonight interested in running for off-campus district seat? Wonderful. Please rise. Meet us at the front of the podium here. On your way there, please recite and spell your full name for the vice president so he can type it out.
It is Alaric Keebler, A-L-A-R-I-C-K-E.
Just make sure Parker's got it right there.
That just right?
I got it right.
Oh, A-L-A. R-I-C. Space. K-E-E-B-O. Like that? Yep. Excellent.
Alrighty, wonderful, Mr. Keebler. You will have 3 minutes to tell the Senate a little bit about why you want to be the next Senator of the Whitewater Student Government. Say your name, major, a little bit about why you want to be here, and then go on to questions. Floor is yours.
I'm Alaric Keebler. I'm from Lake Mills, Wisconsin, and I commute here, so I feel like it would fit as. I feel like it would make sense if I did off campus. I attended the gallery one time, and Isaiah told me about this, and I thought it was a really cool opportunity. I will preface this by saying I'm not terrific at public speaking, but I'm hoping this will make it a little bit better. I'm a freshman, cybersecurity. Honestly, not 100% sure what I would do to help Whitewater, but I'm here to learn and see and try to help as best as I can. Can't think of anything super specific, but if I see it, I would love to make changes to the best of my ability and help all the people here. Honestly, that's about all I got. I've been in the National Guard for the Army for about 3 years now. I've enjoyed that. That's about it. I appreciate your time for having me here.
Wonderful. Great job. Well, with that, we will move into questions. Are there any questions today? Senator Houston.
With a single word, how would you describe your leadership style?
I'd say caring. I feel like the first thing you have to do is care about the people that you're leading, as opposed to just saying what you're thinking. You have to listen and care for everyone that you're helping.
Any other questions, Senator Calvin?
If there's one thing you would change on campus, what would you change? How and why?
Like I said, I'm honestly here just during my classes because I commute, but I could say what I would want to change, like coming here. I feel like from the few times that I've drove here, for example, the roads have been very not good. Not at all. Like almost slid and hit a car on my way here last week. So I feel like that's a big thing to make it easier to access campus if you're an off-campus person, which I feel like a good majority of Whitewater is. Don't quote me on that.
Any other questions? Senator Punzel.
What is the biggest challenge you faced as a leader so far in your time as a leader, and how did you overcome it, or if it's still happening, how do you plan to overcome it?
There was a period of time where I was in the woods in Louisiana for 2 weeks, no shower, nothing like that. So stress was the main part of that, but I had someone ask me a question, and I'll be honest, I was very hard-headed. I wanted to act like I knew the answer, but I feel like the hard part for me in overcoming that challenge was to ask someone who did have the answer, if that answers your question.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Senator Gross.
If you were a tool in a toolbox, what would you be and why?
Same measuring tape. I feel like, measure twice, cut first, that kind of thing. And I don't know if any of you know who Colin Furze is, but he wrote a book on how anything in a toolbox can be a hammer. I feel like that's a very average thing, but if you think about it, anything in a toolbox can be a hammer, so to contradict the popular belief.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. All right. With that, we will move into a vote. You can actually leave that up at the podium. Wonderful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
With that, we move into a roll call vote as we only have one possible appointee tonight. You can say aye if you are in favor of the prospective senator, or you can say nay. All right, Madam Clerk, are you ready? Would you please call the roll?
Senator Bolt.
Aye.
Senator Carter.
Aye.
Senator Irwin.
Aye.
Senator Esterholm.
Aye.
Senator Gross.
Aye.
Senator Gutzoff. Senator Houston.
Aye.
Senator Kelvin.
Aye.
Senator Michael.
Aye.
Senator Miller.
Aye.
Senator Patricus.
Aye.
Senator Punzel.
Aye.
Senator Purnell.
Aye.
Senator Schmidt.
Aye.
Senator Wheaton.
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Aye.
Senator Gutzoff.
All right, wonderful. Wonderful. And with that, we have unanimously approved the newest senator of the Whitewater Student Government. Congratulations. All righty, and with that, we will move into the appointment of one Esker District seat. Is there anyone in the gallery tonight interested in running for an Esker District seat? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. With that, we will move to the appointment of two Rock County District seats. Is there anyone in the gallery tonight interested in running for a Rock County District seat? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we will move into guest speakers, starting with Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Frank Bartlett.
Woohoo, Frank.
Come on up.
Woohoo, yeah.
All right. Thank you for the title of Vice Chancellor. I'm only the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. My name is Frank Bartlett. But tonight I'm here as the advisor to the International Student Association. In case you didn't know, the International Dinner is coming soon. March 7th, 5 o'clock. You know, the International Dinner is coming. We have the menu set. We have publicity coming out. ISA will be tabling tomorrow between 11 and 2. So tickets are available at Goodhue Hall, first floor, you know, where the main front desk is. For students, it's $5. For, you know, everybody, or the guest, it's $10. So it's a good meal. We're working on performances. That's turned into an interesting challenge this year. You know, our belly dancer had some health issues, and if you're not healthy, you can't do the belly dance. So, you know, it's something, SAO dancers doesn't have a lot of dancers this year. So a lot of things, well, it's like, but we're going on, we're moving forward. You know it, we're gonna have a great meal. We're gonna have performers there. It's a great time, it's a great evening. You know, at the end of the night, there are also, people grab flags that come up to the stage. If you look at our website, there's some great photos of international dinners with these students with flags up there, so it's a great experience. So I'm hoping you take time out of your schedule, you know, to participate in this. Through NALT, or no, through SUPAC. I gotta remember, I'm with NALT, but you know, with ISA and SUPAC. You know, the students fund the international dinner. So it's one of those big things that you're an active part on many different levels. Of course, most of the funding comes from the fundraising aspect. So, you know, I've been reaching out for a number of years, so I know who to tap into, who has money and who doesn't. So, and I've gotten a lot of money, because the money really doesn't come from the ticket sales. Just so you know, there's only 250 tickets. You know, if you look at $5 a pop, you do the math, how much money that is. Doesn't cover the cost of tickets. And housing's giving away 70. So next week, they're going to be sending out an email to the students in the residence halls, providing 70 tickets for first come, first serve. So if you live in the residence halls, you don't know what you would want to do, wait till you get that email, go down to the first floor bid you desk, get your free ticket. That's another opportunity for you. So you don't even have to pay for it. If you're a little bit strapped for cash, or you know somebody who says, I wish I could, but I don't have money, connect the dots. Reach out to me. We'll take care of them, okay? You know, because I think it's an important experience. So, you know, it'll be my last one here at UW-Whitewater, so I'm going out with a bang. Come join us for some great food, some great entertainment, and a great night. Well, the rest of where the night goes, that's all on you, right? I'm just going through the dinner aspect, so we usually are out of there within 2 hours. So that's probably more than you wanted to know, but I appreciate you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just a comment, we have the menu and the info on the date that we're gonna be hanging in the office, so you can see it there.
Anything else? Well, seeing none, with that, we'll move to the approval of the agenda and minutes, starting with the minutes from February 10th, 2025. Can I get a motion to approve? Senator Bull?
Motion to amend the Senate minutes of February 10th to accurately reflect a unanimous nay in regards to the shared governance resolution of 2024-12-1101.
Aye or nay.
Wonderful. Can we get unanimous consent? Oh, can I get a second? Senator Calvin. Unanimous consent. Any opposed? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. All right. The minutes for February 10th have been amended to show a unanimous nay vote. Any other amendments for the minutes February 10th, 2025? Going once, going twice. Senator Bull.
Motion to amend the Senate minutes of February 10th to accurately correct the guest speaker sections, to give them the respect of a few typos in some of their moments.
Wonderful. Just clerk, let us know.
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a second? Deputy Speaker Trees. Unanimous consent to amend some clerical edits in the guest speaker section. Any opposed? Once, going twice, seeing none. With that, the minutes from February 10th, 2025 have been amended in the guest speaker section for clerical spelling errors. Is there now, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2025? Senator Calvin?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Wonderful. Can I get a second? Second by Senator Esterholm. Can I get unanimous consent?
Acclamation.
Wonderful. Golly, the minutes from February 10th, 2025 have been approved. With that, we'll move on to the agenda for February 17th, 2025. I would like to start with a motion to strike item F from special orders. I need a second. Senator Carter.
Second.
Wonderful. Unanimous consent. Going once, going twice. Seeing none. With that, the agenda for February 17th, 2025 has been amended. Any other, getting a motion to approve or any other amendments? Deputy Speaker, choose.
I move to add Frank Bartlett, Assistant Vice Chancellor, Student Affairs, and ISA Advisor.
Can I get a second? Seconded by Senator Houston. Can I get a voice vote? Whatever it is. Acclamation has been called. Any opposed? Once going twice, seeing none. With that, the agenda for February 17th, 2025 has been amended. Can I get a motion to approve? Deputy Speaker Rodriguez.
Move to approve.
Wonderful. Seconded by Senator Rose. Can I get a voice vote?
Acclamation.
Wonderful. Any opposed? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. With that, the agenda for February 17th, 2025 has been approved unanimously. With that, we'll move on to student issues and concerns. Any student issues and concerns tonight in the gallery? If you have any student issues and concerns, you're welcome to rise and speak on them for a 3-minute speaking period. Can't be about anything on the agenda. Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we'll move on to reports, starting with external committee reports. We'll start with Intercollegiate Athletics Committee. Senator Carter, you can come to the podium and go to the floor.
Greeting. Oh, this is weird. Greetings. So yeah, this is the report for the Intercollegiate Athletics Committee. It's gonna be a bit long, and I'm sorry, but first off, Director Callahan stated it was a hard fall for all sports because of the unexpected passing of gymnast Kara Welsh. Athletes and teams are still grieving, but pulling through stronger than ever before. Personal note, counseling is free through UHCS and Winter. Please take care of yourselves. You matter more than anything else. So just a heads up. Athletic Director Ryan Callahan thanked the University Center, Advisor Bilgan, and everyone for the amazing vigil they put on for Kara. Christian Paska won Student Athlete of the Year, who has won the conference championship in 23. Him and Gunnar Schielander finished second and third at the cross country championship, with Patska having a time of 23:48.7 and Schielander with a time of 23:49.5. Congratulations to the following teams on their WIAC championships. Coach Frank Barnes and the UW-Whitewater tennis team won their 18th consecutive WIAC title. Coach Andrea Wieland and the UW-Whitewater women's golf team for winning their 8th straight WIAC championship. Baseball finishing second at the College World Series, and volleyball finishing as runners-up in the NCAA championship game. Individual awards, Whitewater had 8 individual athletes of the year, 5 newcomers of the year, 5 academic All-American honors, and 5 coaches of the year. In 23 and 24 academic year, the Intercollegiate Athletics had 47 Chancellor Scholar athletes. Student athletes graduation rate is 77% compared to the rest of the university at 68%. GPA for the department was 3.263 compared to the universities of 3.135, and 430 student athletes had a 3.0 or higher. Director Callahan gave me this big old packet. I didn't go through it all. I just gave you a short report because I didn't want to bore all of you. So if you would like to see it, feel free to. It's got 4 sections, a lot of words. So continue. They have a saying in athletics, but continue power traditions. And I yield my report.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator Carter. Any questions? On what's? See, none. Wonderful. With that, we'll move into Warhawk Dining Advisory Committee. Senator Reed, the podium, you have the floor.
quick, but we did have a lot to cover. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So we met last Friday on Valentine's Day. Great meeting. It was the first meeting of the semester, so we had a lot to review. We reviewed the purpose of the committee in the beginning of the meeting, which I felt was important as we knew what, as students and members of WSG, what we should be bringing and information we should be finding and looking for to bring to the committee to address the concerns of students as we are and represent them. So we were introduced to Fabio, who is the UC Assistant Director of Business and Dining Services, and he said that, I grabbed a quote because I thought he said it was a pretty good one. He said, "This time is to be used for concerns and information of students' uses to best help them," and that's exactly what happened in this meeting. So a few things we talked about was the Warhawk Dining Experience Survey that happened last semester, which led to the creation and opening of the new Ike Schaefer Commons lunch option. We took turns sharing our thoughts and perceived student feedback and perspectives, which was a really good conversation filled with a lot of positivity towards this new option. We also chatted about the feedback that we have gathered from the UC market downstairs, and we specifically discussed the concern of students' knowledge of it, and the conversation ended up with being centered toward advertising, like where it needs to be and how to get the information out, as that was a concern that we found that students weren't finding knowledge of the market. The last big ticket item we talked about was the national survey coming up here in March, and he gave us a task as student government and the dining committee to spread awareness and news about the survey. It is a long one. I remember it took like 20 minutes for me to fill it out in the fall. Though it takes some time, it's really beneficial. It's a national survey, so it shows us our standings, where we stand in the opinions of our school's dining services compared to Wisconsin and the nation as a whole. And from that survey, we got things like the new Wild Blue Sushi. From our results here, we compared it to other universities and found the most favorited sushi, which was the Blue Sushi, so now that's what we have. And that's also how we created the Ike Schaefer Commons lunch option, and I know a lot of people really like it. So if we want to keep seeing positive changes, we need to get the word out about the survey, which will be happening this year in March, and continue every March, so in the following fall semester, those changes can be reflected. They also noted overall meal plan usage is higher than expected, while cash and dining dollar spending is slightly lower. The Dub location's new items, so the pickle pizza, jalapeno poppers, and mac and cheese poppers, are selling well and breaking new sales records, so it's pretty exciting. Some upcoming events for dining include the Sauce It Up Chef Competition in Drumlin. I believe that's next week. Then we also have the International Dinner, which we already discussed tonight. Highly recommend spreading the news about that, as well as the teaching kitchen sessions with the campus food pantry. And then we also had some students voice concern about the perceived increases in vegan versus meat proteins, and staff are addressing a portion control misunderstanding at Drumline. And then our next meeting will be March 7th, where we will address more problems and concerns. Any questions?
Any questions? Senator Cobb?
I just wanted to clarify, you had talked about the rates, there was more meal plan usage than expected and lower dining dollars. Two things. One, if you could elaborate on that, if you were able to. And second of all, was that lead to any concerns with their budgetary expectations and what they're able to allocate in resources for the food they're able to provide? Because from my constituents, I've heard concerns about the quality of food at some of the dining services, and I'm curious if that may be a factor.
I can definitely answer that first question, that from the fluctuation of graduations and the new students that we have this semester is reflecting those new changes. Can I yield to Director Ballister? Do you have an answer to that second question about the budgets?
Yeah, could you repeat that question, please? The second half of that?
It was if there's any, I've had some concerns for students if that change in that is affecting based on what their budgetary when they put their bid, if that's affecting how much they're able to put into if it's affecting the quality of dining options.
Jen, you want to answer that?
I'd be happy to, I'm talking loud because the mic's not working. So those two things don't touch each other. They have to supply what's in their contract, whether or not at this point they're breaking even or whatever that may be. each semester they look through it and have conversations. That's why some of the changes that students wanted for this semester were able to be locked in. So that's why you saw the change in Ike's and you saw some other things. Thank you as we're adding the battery charge. So if you want specific budgetary information, I would encourage you to ask Speaker Wilson to ask Fabio or Angela to come in and talk through specifically that, or set up a meeting with them, because they'll have all the data. It has been this semester, the people are definitely eating, and there's definitely stuff that they're choosing to eat at a higher rate than anticipated, but those are good things. So not as much as you wanted, probably. We can get more.
Could you expound on the concerns you mentioned around vegetation versus protein options in the dining halls?
I had to leave the meeting short, so I'm also going to go to Director Balcher.
Yeah, I can answer that. So there has just been some concerns. Students were sharing that they see that, or at least they perceive that there's more vegan options than non-vegan options now. And so they're just a bit concerned with that change, the unbalance, if you will.
I think it's important to note that at this meeting, we're not, the main purpose of this committee is to get the information to the appropriate folks. So this information has gotten back to the dining folks, and we'll wait to see what changes are made and hear if any changes will be made. You know, in some meetings they do a little more solution-based work. This one is we're getting information to the experts, and they'll make sure they do what's best.
You mentioned about how the upcoming survey is going to kind of dictate what the future looks like for dining here at Whitewater. If, say, a student is imposed by the survey itself, would their voice be considered less than in relation to the survey, especially if perhaps they were to do their own investigations of like student body opinions?
So the way that the survey works is every student has an opportunity to fill it in, and we actually get to pick other universities that we want to compare ourselves to, so that data is aggregately brought together and compared, right, to other schools and to where we want to be. So I'm not quite sure I understand the question, except to say that I think every person has an equal say, right? Because of the way the survey is set up, and then when it comes back to the dining committee and they look at the results, right, that's when there's another opportunity to narrow this to this, so that they can address some things very specifically or make some changes that they would have to take through the process that's outlined in the contract with Chartbooks. Make those changes.
To amend my previous statement, I apologize for the issue there. I think a better way to phrase it is, once this survey time has passed, would student voices still be like heard?
Absolutely.
In regards to.
Yes.
I think there's always a comment section and survey up. This survey specifically is the one where we have the ability to compare ourselves to everyone else, because not just us, but let's just say, for example, every university in Wisconsin is taking the survey at the exact time. So that's the purpose for this one. There's always a spot, either if it's someone in WSG or even on the website for dining, for students to voice their concerns and questions. That's always something that we allow students voices their opinions.
Yeah, I'd say Senator Wheaton summarized it well. You have two directors of student affairs who are going to continue to represent students. You have in the dining halls the smiley faces, or the instant text feature, and reporting available on the website. And this committee is going to continue to meet past when the survey closes. So I would urge, if any of your constituents come to you and say, hey, the survey is closed, what do I do? Direct them to our Director of Student Affairs, and that the directors will get it to the committee, and it'll be heard and equally valued.
Senator Carter.
Isn't it true that if you go on dineoncampus.com/UWW, there is a feedback form on there that students can enter at any time of the day to put their feedback in for dining, and it goes straight to the dining room?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Senator.
Senator Cobb.
Quick question. I was just had some targets. What is the response rate target? Like, what is the goal for the survey? what's the target, what is the past response rate, and at what rate do they need to have a trust in the efficacy of the answers? Or like,
Yeah, the main goal of this is the university and slash dining chose this for the opportunity of students to gain the best experience out of campus and dining. So the purpose of the survey is, again, like I said, this one is more of comparison to make changes. The reason we're doing it now and in the fall is because when we did it in the fall, we saw the need for something to change at Ike Schaefer's, as that seemed to be students' the biggest concern, as it was you couldn't really use a meal swipe at all or meal equivalency. You had to use dining dollars to pay the remainder of that bill. Now you have that option to go swipe in and choose an entree, a salad, a fruit, and a dessert and drink. So it's more similar to a dining hall than in past it was. And so that reflection came from the survey, and that's the purpose of the survey.
Looking for exact numbers, I'd say email a director of student affairs and they can reach out to dining staff and get those numbers for you.
Senator Schmidt.
Yeah, this is a relatively new issue, so I'd ask anyone that might have any information. I think in Esther, like the dish machine broke or whatever the rotating piece is. Does anyone know what the timeline is on that for that getting fixed? And I know this is relatively new, so.
You know, as of when?
Yes, because it also happened in Drumlin. On Friday night, both of them just stopped working.
I do know the Drumlin, I went to Drumlin this weekend. Drumlin is back up and going, so.
Deputy Chief of Troops.
Could they just be turned off?
No, they were like broken. It was I think Associate Director has it.
Associate Director.
This happened last year as well. It's very short. It'll be back up in like a week at the tops.
I'd say make sure you can send a text. Make sure that they know about it, especially if it's late at night. That's just doing your part, and then if it persists, let us know.
Senator Collins. Senator Collins.
Yeah. And then just one other thing, I know you probably already heard this, I just had some constituent things about the ice cream machines. I don't know if they knew about this or not. I presume they have, I just had to inquire regarding this.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'll keep in mind for the next visit to bring up. I don't remember if it was on the agenda. Was it covered? I know there's always concerns like that. So thank you. We will bring that to the committee again. If you ever have problems like that have been said tonight, you come to me, any of the directors of student affairs. We will be more than happy to answer those questions. And there's also that feedback button on the Whitewater Warhawk Dining Instagram that you can go and you can submit your feedback, so those concerns can be addressed as well.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Once, twice, see them. Thanks, Henry. With that, we'll move on to internal committee reports. So starting with the Constitutional Revisions Committee report. Deputy Speaker Patricus, you can take the floor, and while you do, I would like to mention, if we could, generally speaking, keep questions limited to the context of the report. Those reports are for, the e-board reports are going to be within your packet if you want little pointers as you're going along. But otherwise, if you have questions on specific things, take notes. If you have questions apart from the contents of the report, they're probably best to go to our elected president or vice president or any of the directors or any relevant stakeholders you might see in the room. Patricus, you have the floor.
Yeah, CRC met on Thursday, and it's one of, if not the only internal committee that elects the chair. I believe all the other ones are by nature of some position, at least all the ones I have. So I was elected chair, Director Ballesteri was elected vice chair, and then Senator Wheaton was elected secretary. And last week there was a bill, S-2425-04, the Internal Committee Realignment Act of 2025. That was referred to committee, specifically CRC, where the submitters withdrew it. You're also sent to the bill you see tonight. If I get to it here. This one, S-2425-05, the creation and establishment of Senate priorities process. And the submitters of this one decided to take some elements of the previous bill and kind of combine them. But the committee created a list of pros and cons, and then the organizational impact, and I have them here for you. So that's what I'll be doing. The pros, it encourages senators to take initiative and engage more actively, provides clear guidance on where senators can start doing work, restructures committees to allow directors to effectively assign tasks, and reduces the likelihood of subpar priorities due to multiple voting and review stages. The cons the committee decided on are that it may push senators in an unproductive or unintended direction, has the potential to feel like homework rather than an engaging activity, and that ineffective or subpar priorities may slip through the cracks despite the process. Organizational impact formally introduces associate directors as co-chairs. There have been some differences historically, whether they're co-chairs or vice chairs or involved in the committee at all. So this kind of formalizes that process. It permits chairs to request unexcused absences for members failing to attend meetings, which is currently allowed, or to complete unassigned work. It removes the special provisions for the communications committee and treats it in the same manner as the student affairs and the academic affairs committees. Introduces a multi-step vetting process to ensure well thought out and meaningful priorities. It requires all senators to submit priority proposals, ensuring participation from all members, and establishes a formal mechanism for reviewing priorities, which ensures adaptability throughout the legislative term. Now yield.
Any questions for Deputy Speaker Trees? Who wants? Who wants? Seeing none. With that, we will move into the second internal committee report. Internal evaluations.
So IEC met on Friday. We had elections. Senator Whedon was elected vice chair, and Senator Carter was elected secretary. An alleged violation of the standing rules was submitted regarding the collection of signatures in the WSG office. Upon review of the standing rules and past precedents set by the elections committee, it was determined that collecting signatures in the office during a current election for that election is not allowed. The committee determined, because the incident described occurred not for a current election, that no violations of the standing rules are found and no sanctions are recommended. Additionally, it was noted that this practice was more widespread than a single isolated incident. If you suspect or witness a violation of the WSG Constitution, standing rules, including the code of conduct or university policy, please send me an email. Alleged election violations by candidates or slates should be submitted to the clerk, who serves as chair of the elections committee. When submitting a report, please include any and all evidence of the alleged violation. All individuals have the presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. So in order to determine a violation or recommend sanctions, evidence is required. The more evidence you can provide, the more it will assist in that process. And if you do submit an alleged violation, your identity will remain anonymous. So, yeah, with that, I'm going to yield.
Any questions for Deputy Speaker Trees? Who wants? Any questions? Seeing none. With that, we'll move on to officer reports, starting with the report. President, sound right.
Good evening, everyone. Last week, I met with Jonah Ralston, chair of Faculty Senate, on Tuesday, and then we went over to Faculty Senate together. The book club met on Wednesday. Registration is still open. Yeah, those interested, please come see me. Probably last week we'll extend registration. I met with Brenda Jones about some Stanton Road updates. Met with Gabby Drollett to discuss shared governance on campus. I also met with Corey King to discuss some shared governance joint resolutions. I attended CRC, EEC, Warhawk Dining Advisory Committee, and the IEC hearing. This week we had Strategic Planning and Budget Committee, SPBC. In case you're wondering, that membership is myself, Vice President Boehm, Speaker Wilson, Deputy Speaker Patricus, and Parliamentarian Irwin. Tomorrow, Commencement Committee meets. The Safety Committee will meet as well. Wednesday, you guys did book club. Woo! All right, so if anybody's interested, please come talk to me. Later on this week, I'll be meeting with Senator Esterholm and some other senators to plan an outreach event. The cabinet will be meeting for dinner at Advisor Building's house this week. I hear lasagna is on the menu, so we'll do a little team building there so we can better represent you and students. I'm doing a dining on-site insight, so they're offering $20 for students to sign up for, I believe, a 45-minute slot and talk with folks from Chartwell, so we're not from campus, so I'm not biased in any way. I will be attending Thursday, 2 p.m. in UC 266, so please register on Connect2. You can join me, we'll have a good time. If you have any questions, you can come find Jan or I. We can help you navigate Connect2. Then an EEC meeting this week, and the Chancellor's Student Advisory Council will be meeting. Myself, Senator Carter, and our Directors of Student Affairs will be joining us. As promised, you flip the page, I included some photos of my godson's first birthday. Please enjoy. I know it was a request of our Deputy Speaker. And as always, please continue to reach out with questions, concerns, etc. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the question.
Any questions for Mr. President? Anyone else? Mr. President, what time does it look like on Wednesdays?
2 p.m. Wednesdays, UC 68 this week.
And it went well last week, I assume.
What?
It went well last week.
It went really well.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we will move to the report of our Vice President, Mr. Parker Bain.
Well, this is weird for me. Alright, well, I am back from the dead from last week, so it's good to see everybody again. As for last week, a lot of my tasks I did were virtual. I met with Directors Kahn, Malstrari, and Linneman. I had the privilege of meeting with Parliamentarian Irwin regarding some outreach opportunities. And I also made a few of y'all some lovely placards, and I will be walking around with binders if you received a new placard today as well. But for this week, I'll be meeting again with Parliamentarian Irwin. I'm working on an outreach script. I'll be attending a dining focus group meeting with President Bradley, and then I'll also be meeting with Directors Reiser, Smith, Clerk West, and your very own President Bradley. And with that, I give my report.
Any questions for the Vice President? Hold on once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move to the report of our WSG Advisor. Jan Goody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Couple quick things. We'll be helping with the city election. If you live on campus and would like to vote tomorrow, there's only one thing on the ballot, but would love for you to do that. Come to the ballroom between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. tomorrow. If you don't believe your address is correct or that you need to register, it would be great to stop by tomorrow because then you'll be set for April. There are many more things on the April election. There are 2 referendums on behalf of the city of Whitewater, the school board elections. There's a bunch more stuff on April. So take the time to make sure you're all set for tomorrow. So go vote. Looking forward to having a conversation with Senate leadership about training or a retreat or what that looks like because it's almost March. So we'll be working on that hopefully. A little bit of popcorn. So right now student government has 44% of its seats filled. Right? So what can each of us do? Think for just a moment, what's one thing that you can do to help get someone here next week to experience it or come back the next week and be appointed, as some of you have been appointed since the second semester started. So anybody have any ideas what you personally can do between now and next Monday to get some peeps here? Any thoughts?
Tell a friend in class.
Tell a friend in class, absolutely. Who's going to do that? Isaiah is because he suggested it. Anybody else mention it in class? Do some, okay. What else? What else can you do? I know, don't hate me. Yes, please.
Tell a friend in another club or org.
Yep. Share people in other groups or orgs that you're in or clubs. Thank you very much. Who's going to do that? Anybody? Raise your hand. The idea is that we all raise our hands to leave response. Okay, yes, you had your hand. No. Go for it.
Tabling.
Right? You absolutely could take WSG material and table. I'm sure that there could be something worked out with your parliamentarian about that, and you could actually get your outreach stuff done too as well. Parliamentarian, Erwin.
Speaking of outreach, completing your outreach events is a great way to get people informed of all the details of WSG and make them see, give them a little insight into what we do. So,
any other ideas, folks? Yes.
Slide it into a whatever conversation. If you do anything WSG related, just slide it into the conversation and be like, yeah, this is what WSG is about, and then go on a tangent.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, talk about dogs or puppies or something really fun. We're getting a conversation. No, seriously, I mean, it's important for students to know who WSG is, but what's more important is actually have senators in the seats. Because it's one thing to know about the work that this group does, but it's a whole other thing to have the body be functioning at its capacity, to have those individual folks there. So I would challenge each of you to think of a way to approach at least 4 or 5 people in the next week to try to get them here. Kind of take the barrier down. It's kind of intimidating to come in here, especially because we have the microphones and all that other kind of stuff. So I would just encourage you to do that, please. Try to bring someone with you, and if each of you brought somebody with you, it'd be great. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield to questions.
Director Smith.
Director Bilgan, can you clarify if the polling places close at 7 or if they close at 8?
Oh, goodness gracious. They close at 8. It's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. My bad.
Thank you.
Wishful thinking. I'm just going to be here at 7 o'clock. So thank you for that. They'll be open until 8 o'clock. You have to be in line, which there will not be lines tomorrow. I am certain of it. So please, if you do not live on campus, more than likely you vote downtown at the Armory.
President.
For those of you who don't know, each semester I submit a list of priorities to our chancellor, and he takes a really close look at those, and he really takes them to heart. And I've split them this semester in a matter of days, they'll go out to our chancellor, Dr. Corey King, and we have 3 internal priorities. The first one is to increase organizational awareness, how do more students know that we can help them, and the second is increasing organizational involvement. I want to try to read the brief couple sentences under that. In addition to educating students about our organization and the services we offer, we must ensure the health and longevity of our organization by recruiting students who are willing to serve on the WSG Senate. It is a personal goal of this administration to fill every Senate seat. By getting new students in this organization, we can continue to spread awareness of our organization while also ensuring we have fresh yet diverse opinions within the Senate. So, to Jan's point how important this will be going to the chancellor, what exactly I just read to you.
Wonderful. Any other questions for our advisor? Who wants? Who twice? Seeing none. Wonderful. With that, we move to E1 reports, starting with the report of Director of Academic Affairs, Abby Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. Last week, I had a meeting with Provost Chenoweth, and we had a conversation about, mostly it was about the transcript discussion that I will mention in just a minute in my report. I also went to Faculty Senate, and then I had a meeting to discuss the instructor awards. So that date is Tuesday, April 29th. It'll be at 4 p.m. and it's in the UC Old Main Ballroom, which is like right across from here on the other side. And so that is the event where we celebrate the instructors that really excelled at teaching students. There will be some like appetizers, so it's a good time. And then this week, I have a meeting about Stellic, which is that new degree auditing platform. So if any of the new senators have any questions, feel free to come talk to me after the meeting. I have an advising meeting as well, and then a commencement and transcript fees discussion that I'm working on with Speaker Wilson and Deputy Speaker Patricus. So that's exciting. And then if you're on the Academic Affairs Committee, please make sure that your Outlook calendar is updated, because I plan to have a meeting next week. So keep an eye out on your calendars to see when you get that invite from me. So with that, I yield to any questions.
Any questions for Director Ryan? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. With that, we'll move into the report of Student Affairs, Joe Balestray.
Good evening, everybody. I apologize for not submitting my report this week. So let's see. So last week I met with Chief Kinlan to further discuss our ideas for unifying the diversion program. Also, I attended our bi-weekly student affairs meeting with Associate Director Khan. I attended the CRC meeting on Thursday. I had my one-on-one with Vice President Bain, and I attended the Warhawk Dining Advisory Committee on Friday. This week I'm going to be meeting with Advisor Billigan. I'm going to be attending the Chancellor Student Advisory Council on Friday. I'm going to be helping with the Assistant Vice Chancellor search. And also for those who are on the Student Affairs Internal Committee, I'm going to be sending an email out, or I believe Associate Director Zaid Khan already sent an email out looking for your availability this week and next week. We're going to be trying to pinpoint a time that works for everybody. With that, have a great week. Let me know if you need anything, and I yield my report.
Wonderful. Any questions for Director Balestray? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move to the report of our Associate Director of Student Affairs, Zaid Khan.
I also say sorry for not submitting a report, my bad. And congrats on making it through the fourth week. Hope Valentine's went romantical. And fun fact, February 15th is National Singles Awareness Day. So for the rest of us, let's go. And last week I met with Kristen Fellhauer and Frank Bartlett, the director of Australia, to go over the misconduct reporting app and how we can better get student engagement. And I also met with Vice President Parker Bain to go over some future plans and some future planning I have. This week I will attend the Chancellor Student Advisory Meeting and will also be attending book club. I will also be having some one-on-ones with senators, and if you have some concerns that students have brought up, please email me, find some time, my Outlook is updated. I have also just sent an email to the Student Affairs Committee, so if you're a part of that, I implore you to please check your email and update your Outlook calendar, because me and Director Balistreri will be finding some time for the committee to meet either this week or next week. And with that, I send the report.
Wonderful. Senator Cobb?
So just a quick question. Will there be a brief rendition of these reports added to the minutes retroactively?
Yeah, they're always is. So as the clerk takes minutes, right, she listens back and then they're added to the minutes.
Sorry, just as a point of clarification. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move to the report of our Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, Ron Smith.
Hello, everybody. First of all, happy President's Day. To our lovely President. I chose a quote from President John Quincy Adams that I felt exemplified student government for today. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And I think student government does that quite well. Last week, I did my office hours. I worked on and read about our collaboration with Political Science Student Association, as well as the Law Society, that is still in the works. I met with Patricia Hillard, the interpersonal violence educator, about its honest, and I met with the Elections Engagement Committee. This week, I had my rescheduled one-on-one with Gabby Jolly, Chief of Staff. I met with Vice President Bain today as well. Of course, the WSG meeting. I will be attending the meeting with Senator Esterholm about the outreach event. I have City Council on Thursday this week. I will be attending a dining focus group on Friday. You can still sign up for that on Connect 2 if you're interested in giving your feedback directly to dining in exchange for some dining dollars. So you can still sign up for that. Otherwise, I still have my EBC this week, and then some campus and community updates. The next election is tomorrow, as you've heard. And if you're interested in getting involved with the City Commissioner Board, please let me know. I yield to questions.
Wonderful. Any questions for Director Smith?
So tomorrow's election is the primary for the superintendent race. Could you, the superintendent is probably by far the least well-known statewide office, so could you take a moment to explain what the superintendent is, what the office does, and what the direct impact on students is?
Sure. So if you consider us like the superintendent of a school district, we've all heard of that. This is that person, but for the whole state of Wisconsin, which is a little important, right? This person, sorry, I pulled a Ballotpedia out of prepared. This person provides leadership for all of the public school districts within the state. They have information about school management, attendance, and performance. They license all of the state's teachers, and they receive and disperse all of the federal aid that our state gets for public schools. So if you think about how that affects not only you, but perhaps your students, if you're an education major, or your family members, this is a very important office. Thank you.
Well, any other questions, Senator Houston?
What can one do to make sure that people are more aware of the election and can vote?
The same things you do to make them more aware of student government. Talk about it. Word of mouth is a very powerful tool, especially when it doesn't come from people trying to table and push things in people's faces. They're more likely to listen to you if you bring it up in the classroom or talk about it over a meal, anything like that. There will be a lot more opportunities for elections promotion in April. Well, coming up to April.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move into the report of our Director of Communications. Page 1.
Good evening, everyone. I want to start off by deeply apologizing for not submitting my report on time either this week. Very busy week last week for me. Last week, I was able to finish designing my post for the rest of this month. I had my one-on-one with Vice President Bain where we talked about the upcoming outreach events for us. This week, I'm going to be brainstorming ideas for future content for the interpersonal violence prevention education. I'll also be working to refine the outreach presentation, and I will be talking with Clerk West with the idea of maybe creating a photo circle album for WSG. Any questions?
Any questions for Director Lewin? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, wonderful. With that, we will move to the report of our WSG clerk. City Chief West.
Hey everyone. Last week, I contacted everyone in the elections committee to schedule our first meeting, which was scheduled for next week, Monday, right before the Senate meeting. So I hope we have at least 6 people show up. Hopefully we should. I continue to update the website and work on backlog. I attended the faculty Senate meeting and attended the book club, which, by the way, it went pretty good. I think if you're even slightly interested, you should come to it. This week, I have my one-on-one with Vice President Bain, continue my regular meetings with Advisor Billigan, and book club. So, have a great week.
Any questions for Clerk West? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move into the report of Senate Parliamentarian Blake Earl.
Thank you. So, this past week, I worked on the piece of legislation we'll be viewing today. I attended Constitutional Revision, Election Engagement Committee, and Internal Evaluation Committee. I met with President Bradley about a shared governance matter, met with Vice President Bain about outreach events, which you'll hear a little more in a moment, and attended Senate leadership. This week, I'll be brainstorming some ideas about first-year experience integration and flyer initiative, as well as gathering more data on outreach events and meeting with the Vice President to continue our collaboration. Now then, on to what I'm sure you've all been waiting for, the part of my report that talks about outreach events. Some slight modifications have been made after consulting with different senators. The first outreach event will be limited to 15 to make it easier to accomplish. Those 15 surveys, which will constitute one outreach event, will be due on Sunday, March 2nd. The following week, I will conduct meetings with every senator who completed their outreach event to get their feedback on how they thought the outreach event went and what changes they think they can make. After gathering all that data, I will review it, come up with any possible changes. That following meeting after March 2nd, so that's the March 10th meeting, I will present this data and any changes which I think should be made to the Senate, and there will be a discussion placed on the agenda for the Senate to share their thoughts once they have the complete picture of the data and to discuss any additional changes to the ones I think should be made, as well as any changes that I'm not proposing that they think should be made. Now then, potential outreach events. I drew up a little list of suggestions of ways you can go about getting these surveys. Wandering the UC, just making some connections to strangers. If you see any of your friends sitting around, you can come up to them and talk. I know that some people, that's how they like to collect signatures for their packets, just by wandering the UC. Standing outside dining halls, that's how I collected signatures for my packet. You stand in the lobby to Esker or Drumlin. You ask people who passing by if they have a moment to talk to you. Then you just dive right in. Standing in the lobbies of residence halls. Very importantly, you should not, and I believe cannot, go door to door. Yes, it is not only bit rude, it's also illegal. So But you can stand in the lobbies of residence halls and then do the same thing as you would do in the lobby of dining halls. Speaking to student organizations, this was of course the main way outreach events were completed in the past. You schedule a meeting with a organization, you go to the meeting, you ask for some time to address the org, you run through all the things you have to complete the outreach event, and then you just pop a QR code up on the screen for people to scan and fill out the survey. Great way to get a bunch of surveys all at once. Depending on the club, you could possibly get all 15 in one meeting. And then finally, I want to talk about alternative outreach events. As I mentioned last week, if you have an outreach event which you think accomplishes the spirit of outreach, but is not necessarily these surveys, feel free to talk to me and we will figure out whether or not that can qualify as an outreach event. I'm very open to discussing different ideas that you may have. Now at this moment, there have only been 4 surveys completed so far, 3 of which were between people in the org. Those will be counted since I didn't clarify at the last meeting that you can't complete your outreach event with someone in the org, but in the future they will not be. A single survey thus far has been completed with a student outside of the org, and that was done by Senator Gross here. Yes, snaps for Senator Gross. And now I will briefly yield to her so she can just share a bit of her experience with you all so you know what kind of to expect.
Hi everyone. Thank you. I certainly did not expect to be the first one to get an outside student, but yeah. I would say it happened at the WSG office, which I think was a pretty good place to do it. I was talking with some students in there, one brought up a concern, and as we're talking, when we finished and they're about to leave, I just slid them the QR code and I was like, if you have a second, please fill this out. It'll help make sure that I'm doing my job to represent you. They filled it out. Yeah, it was a little awkward, kind of like sliding this QR code across the table, but I mean, I got the signature, so. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask Senator Gross to share that with you also. You had a little picture of what the outreach event really looks like, and as you heard, it can, for the most part, this little awkwardness, but largely very organic conversation with the student about their concerns. Now then, going on to my collaboration with the Vice President, that largely revolves around developing different tools to assist senators with completing their outreach events. So we are working on a presentation and even a script for you to take to clubs, and we're working on a personal script that you can use on one-on-one conversations. Many people, like door-to-door salesmen, will have a script with them, so to make them more comfortable with their pitch, we're going to arrange a similar sort of thing. So you can just spiel out the script. Might make you feel a bit comfortable. Vice President Bain has generously offered to accompany people to club outreach events. So he can be there for either moral support or help present with you. And he has even agreed that if he has time to maybe accompany you on some personal one-on-one things like in the UC or something. And I am also extending the same offer to accompany you, so we will be there to help you through, maybe get you comfortable with doing the outreach events. So I think that is it for outreach, except to say that the Connect form, there was a small hiccup. It should be up and running next week. For now, continue using the Google form QR code I handed out last week. There's a stack of them in the office if you need more, and you can also contact me on any email or social media, and I will send you a picture of the QR code if you want a digital copy of it. Now then, since we have one of our first pieces of legislation, I'm so sorry my report is so long today, it won't be this long in the future. But since we have our first piece of one of the first pieces of legislation, the first for many new senators, I just wanted to go through a few different types of motions that you can make while the legislation is on the floor. So the first step is the submitters of the legislation will go up to that podium, will walk you through what the legislation is, why we're supporting it. After that, there will be a questioning phase. This is when you can ask us questions about the legislation. Then there will be a time for discussion and amendments, then amendments, and then discussion on the legislation. Then next week, we'll vote on whether or not to pass it. Today is the only time you can make amendments though. So if you want to make an amendment, amendments are when you want to change something on the legislation. You just say, you raise your placard during the amendment period and say, I move to amend, and then you identify which portion of the legislation you want to amend and read out what you want it to say instead. And you might have to work with, and then we'll just have a little conversation, make sure we have the exact wording up on the board, and then there will be discussion on the motion to amend, which has to pass according to the standing rules by 2/3 to take effect. You can also make motions. Yeah, I'm going to touch on that. You can also make motions to amend motions to amend. There will then be another discussion on the motion to amend the motion, which if it passes, will amend the motion. Then we'll have a discussion on the amended motion before we vote on that, which will then amend the legislation properly. It's a very fun process. A few other motions I've included. Motion to call the question, and I've included the exact wording. I move to call the question. This is when you want to end the debate. Technically speaking, it's I move to call the previous question. So if you think discussion has gone on long enough, people are just repeating themselves at this point, no new information, you can just raise your placard, say I will move to call the question. We'll then vote on that motion. If it passes, we vote on the either the motion, discussion ends and we vote on whatever was being discussed. I move to table. This is when you don't think the legislation or the motion should be voted on at all. Tabling just sets it aside. If you want to set a specific date, for example, if you want to continue adding amendments next week, you can say I motion to table the legislation until next week. Or postpone the legislation until next week. If you want to set a date, it's motion to postpone. If you just want it indefinitely off the floor of the Senate, you make a motion to table. You can also refer it to committee. I motion to refer to committee. This specific legislation has already been through the relevant committee, but it is still an option available to you. Point of personal privilege, I included this, this one isn't very much related to legislation, it's more general. If you're having trouble hearing, for example, you can say point of personal privilege, and then alert us to your concern and we'll move to fix it. Point of order, if someone's breaking Robert's Rules of Orders or the standing rules, you can say point of order, say what behavior is violating the rules. Point of information and point of clarification. If you want information about what we're voting on or what a motion means, our voting process, you can make one of those motions and ask your question. We will fill that in. And then you can if you don't remember the exact words, you have two options. The first is on your placard. There are different motions and brief summaries of them on the back that you can refer to. If you don't have a placard, you can borrow from someone next to you. I'm sure they'd be happy to. Or you can if you know what you want to do is one of these things, you just don't know these specific words, just say, I move that, and we will help you clarify what you mean after you make the motion. So, that is a little brief summary of all the different types of motions that you'll need to make during this legislative process. And with that, I will yield to questions.
Any questions for the parliamentarian?
I'm just wondering, just because not everybody learns auditorily, is there written, other than what's in your report, Senator Irwin, about the outreach and about all the motions that you just talked about? Is there a resource that they can look to?
Motions,
I mean,
outside
there's
of the
back.
placard, they're listed in Robert's Rules of Order. I don't believe they're listed. Are you the Speaker Wilson?
There's a shortcut in the outfit.
Yeah, there's a few books that I have in my speaker cabinet as well. You're welcome to ask to borrow them and peruse at your leisure.
I would also encourage the Senate leadership to print out the cheat sheet from the drive, so that could be in there, but also the outreach. I was trying to take some notes about what the outreach requirements, so I don't know if anybody else caught all that too.
So outreach events are currently only recorded in my 2 reports on the subject. I can produce a consolidated document and include it in next week's packet and find a place to post it online. In the shared drive.
I think it would be helpful, right? I want people to be able to be successful. So thank you for that.
Deputy Speaker, Patrice.
All of you have access to a shared drive that is entitled WSG Senate 24-25. If you have trouble accessing it, let me know. But in there's a spreadsheet that is official WSG Rules of Order that Speaker Wilson just so handily made last semester that has all of this and whether you need a second, whether debate's allowed, whether it's amendable, what the vote is, other important relevant information. There's also a multiple page Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet that lays out the entire procedure, if you want to accomplish something, how you go about doing that. If you have trouble finding that, let me know. Mr. Speaker.
We will have that all printed out for y'all and in the office on top of the fridge under the arrow that says important relevant documents or near in the little filing cabinets underneath the speaker cabinet and equidistant between the deputy speaker cabinet and the speaker cabinet. There is a little filing section that we will put for relevant legislative and parliamentary documents.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for helping that be accessible.
And if you have questions on the floor of the Senate, remember, point of information is always available to you.
Senator Ball.
I would like to inquire about the first year experience integration. What does that exactly mean or look like?
Oh, yes. So first year, as all of you know, people entering the university have to go through certain experiences when they're entering an orientation, freshman seminar. So my goal is to figure out ways to include WSG content into those so that every student entering the school gets information on WSG. So right off the bat, they're fully aware of what we are and that they have representatives on campus whose sole purpose is to address their issues and concerns.
Senator Brown.
Just clarifying, these surveys, are they supposed to be collected from people within your district?
They do not have to be, no.
Any other questions for the parliamentarian? Going once, going twice, seeing none. With that, we'll move to the report of our deputy speaker, Nick Fisher.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. Yeah, QR codes in the office are the only way up on the track. Thank you everyone for doing those. If you're writing some legislation, I made a template very easily accessible, so you don't have to do any of the setup work. It's just start typing. Let me know if you can't find that. Also in the shared drive. Also, if you need assistance writing legislation, I've been told I'm all right at it. So if you need help, I will give the same information to everyone. So if you come to me with an idea maybe I disagree with, I'll still try and get you a piece of legislation on the floor. And you don't care what I'm doing, but or what I'm meeting. But I think that I yield.
Any questions for Deputy Speaker Fisher? Going once, going twice, seeing none. With that, we'll move into my report. I'll keep it super brief. Last week, went to Faculty Senate, did a book club, Warhawk Dining Advisory Committee. I worked through some reassessment of committee assignments, given how things were moving around a bit. If you are interested in seeing how committee assignments possibly change, if the new senators are added, if people step away, etc. You are welcome to take a look at the in the 2024-25 WSG folder. Click in that and go to official roster. There's a tab for internal and external committees. That's kind of the living, breathing document. You'll be able to see those changes in. Go to Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, internal evaluations and constitutional revisions. And then this week, we'll be attending Senator Esterholm's outreach event planning meeting. We'll be accompanying Deputy Speaker Patricus and Director Reiser to the commencement and transcript fees meeting with Provost Chenoweth. And as always, we'll be going to Ewood, but I'm very excited for the lasagna at Jane.
Don't get too excited. It'll be hot.
All right. And I have EDC on Friday. Go to the book club. It was really great last time. I can't express enough how cool of a guy Boki is. Doug's leading it too. You all know how cool Doug is. Boki's a really, really awesome guy with amazing stories, and being able to just be in his presence and learn about networking and kind of see it in action is really cool. With that, I yield to the rest of my report. Are there any questions for myself? Senator.
Seriously, a question for both you and the deputy speaker, but let's say I come up with some idea for legislation. How would that whole process work of submitting a piece of legislation?
I'm so glad you asked. So one of the documents that I mentioned during Parliamentarian Irwin's report, there's a document downstairs. We have a few printed. If anyone would like to walk down there with me, you're welcome to see me after the meeting, and I'll give you a couple copies that are within the office currently. But there's a legislative plan also, depending on when your binder was made, or if you have a binder, in your standing rules at the very back, there is an issue solution and legislative drafting page. If I'm getting to it right there, you're welcome to take a look at that. It walks you through the first couple steps. Like the first step is, it's like identifying, right? So figuring out what the problem may be, and it'll walk you through all the steps necessary. But of course, my email inbox is always open, as well as these two gentlemen as well. Email us, web access, we'd love to help you out. Otherwise, you are all assigned to internal committees. So if ideas come up relative to dining, if ideas come up relative to your classwork, if ideas come up relative to an attendance policy, bring those through your internal committees to the directors, and they are extremely well armed in handling student issues. That's exactly what they're hired to do. Senator Bull.
What if we have an idea that may not be related to one of our own internal or external committees?
Yeah, so obviously there's some access that being part of an internal committee grants you, but there's also some access that being here in the room every Monday at 7 o'clock grants you, or the fact that their business cards remain outside the office. So pick up a business card of a director, shoot them an email, shoot them a call, sit in the office and do your office hour and wait till they inevitably stroll in and say, hey Joe, I've got a quick question about dining. I know I'm not on your committee. What would it look like if we handled this? Parliamentarian.
I would add that all of the internal committees like academic affairs, student affairs are open to anyone in the student body. So while they'll be scheduled around the schedules of the people in the committee, if you have time to attend, you can just pop in and attend the meetings.
The Deputy Speaker Patrice.
That is a great way to spend your office hour, is talking to directors.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, with that, we'll move into unfinished business, of which we have none. We will move into new business, starting with item A, Senate one-year appointment to SUFAC. Pete Houston, if you'd like to come to the front here. So, as just a brief on what this is. So when we have openings in the SUFAC committee, we need to appoint people to said committee through the Senate 1 and 2-year appointments. The process for that, you're about to see it in action, so we'll walk through as we go. But more importantly, SUFAC as a committee, for those of you that weren't in the room last semester or part of the process, it is the committee that handles all of the SUF dollars that go to the student organizations on campus. So if you have questions on that, you're welcome to ask any of two gentlemen up here after the meeting, or we have a few members of the committee in the room as well. With that, Keith Houston, you have the floor. You'll have 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about why you want to be the next appointee to SUFAC.
Thank you, Speaker Wilson. So howdy y'all. I have had the great, opportunity of working with SUFAC a little bit. I've attended several of their meetings. I've, kind of worked with their members. They've sort of, provided some guidance, some sort of just leadership, to me, helping me understand the rules more, understanding the processes. There's a lot I'm still learning. I've, kind of briefly skimmed over policy, but, and obviously, I've gone through training, but there are still a lot of ways where I look to improve. I look to, sort of look more into how the whole process of SUFAC works. I'm really eager to learn. I'm really eager to be passionate about this, whole SUFAC. It, aligns really closely to what I want to do for my career. And part of that is just my sort of desire to work with SUFAC as both, a WSG member and appointee, and also sort of be an ambassador for SUFAC to WSG when it comes to, discussion and writing legislation. And that's honestly about all I had to say. Very excited, I can't wait, and if you have any questions, feel free.
Wonderful. With that, we will move into questions. Start with Deputy Speaker Richard.
Yeah. What does SUFAC stand for?
Oh, good question. So it stands for Segregated University Fees. Wait. Okay, let me start over. Segregated University Fee Allocation Committee.
Before any other
I told you not almost a student.
Before any other questions, 2 years ago, I was the 2-year appointee, Justin Westlake, to SUFAC. I was asked, what does SUFAC mean? I got the question wrong. So I just, and then I left for a year. There were cheers involved. It was great. Any other questions? Senator Ashram?
What's the difference between NALT and SUFAC?
Good question. And I can tell you, I'm not all that familiar with NALT. It's still something I'm trying to kind of figure out and learn. I'm still relatively new to this process. I know SUFAC is, its own little thing. So the whole process is, I'm new. I'm just starting, but the whole process, like, sort of like a bi-weekly process, is just, you're going in there, sort of, it's very similar to WSG, just voting on, or sort of seeing requests for student funding, sort of having discussion on whether or not we need to discuss with these organizations requesting funding or making changes to their funding, making changes to their spending, sort of working with these organizations and also discussing among SUFAC members in voting upon these changes. And also there's the whole deliberation process. I haven't been through that yet, but it's a long, tedious process, but I'm honestly looking forward to that.
Senator Reed?
What grew you towards your interest for this appointment to SUFAC?
So it's really just my, desire for business. It really just relates to my, major at Whitewater. I'm an accounting major. I've, kind of taken an interest in the whole business side of things. And I feel like SUFAC would perfectly represent that. What I want to do for my entire career, like just not even not even just in Whitewater, but just for my whole freaking life until I retire. Like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is really what I want to do. And I feel like SUFAC would give me the opportunities, give me the guidance, and also just help me learn more about what I actually want to do, and sort of just provide me with these networks and opportunities.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Seeing none. All right, this process will work exactly like a Senate appointment would. So we will move into a roll call vote, a vote Aye will be a vote in favor of the candidate. A vote of nay will be a vote against. And you can pass if you'd like a little more time to think.
I wasn't expecting that.
Madam Clerk, are you ready? Would you please call the roll?
Senator Bolt,
Aye.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Aye.
Senator Esquivel, nay. Senator Gross,
Aye.
Senator Getzlaw,
Aye.
Senator Houston,
Abstain.
Senator Kelvin,
Aye.
Senator Michael, Senator Miller,
Aye.
Senator Petrukas,
Aye.
Senator Punzel,
Abstain.
Senator Purnell,
Aye.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Nay.
Speaker Wilson.
Aye. And with that, a vote of. A vote of 11 to 2 with 2 abstentions. Congratulations, Heath Houston, as our next one-year CFAC appointee. A quick note, not that there's anything wrong. Abstentions are generally used when there is like a monetary reward for someone. I, for instance, in the voting of the speakership, it's a paid position, you abstain. Anyone, if a Zaid Khan, for instance, when he was appointed, it's a directorship paid. You abstain when there's payment involved. Yeah, just in future. With that, we will move into item B, Shared Governance Resolution 2025-02-0501, Resolution on Stair Road. Mr. Bradley, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. If you all remember, we had a room reservation, joint resolution at the court last week. Similar thing, different topic. I'm going to start with this page here. This should be in your packet. This is the voting history of the resolution so far. It's important to note it started Academic Staff Assembly, made its way down to University Staff Council, and is not yet made it to Faculty Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to point out that we have the Academic Staff Assembly Chair with us today, Michael Gorman, who can provide some context if needed. The bill itself, I think, is rather straightforward. The ending is just states that the shared governance groups are opposed to a permanent closure of Stair Road. I can provide a little background on Stair Road for you all. Two years ago?
Oh, longer than that. Yes.
Well, for a long, long time. A long, long time ago, in a city called Whitewater. There were some safety concerns on Stair Road, poor visibility, drivers going too fast, students not paying attention, whatever the argument might be from all different folks, campus and community. A safety issue arose, and folks were invested. A couple years ago, members of this body, directors and senators alike, went to the Common Council, and they asked for lower speed limits, speed bumps, pedestrian controls, stop signs, pretty orange flags, things like that. And those were denied for a couple different issues, primarily snow plowing and emergency vehicle response. Right? If we put up different speed bumps, plows can't get through in the winter, emergency vehicles can't go over them as fast as they need to. So we took that information and said, okay, came up with a different solution. That second solution was to close the road between set hours of the day. I think it was like 7 to 7 or something. Easy to remember. And what those gates would do is that they would be gates that we can control. They can open at any time and close at any time. They close every day from 7 to 7 to help guard or shield students. And this also fixed our solution of snowplows not being able to get through, as we'd be able to open the gates. And same with emergency response. That idea took about a year and a half, and worked its way through council. There were multiple different studies on how did that impact road closure. Many of you may remember when we did do a trial run, we did close that Sierra Road 7 to 7 for 2 weeks during the weekdays. We cut some really good data from that. Took that back to Common Council, and Common Council decided that was
not the proper solution either for the city. Little fact, the city owns Staron Road. We don't own that road. So the city owns it, they control what they do with it. And instead the proposal they gave us back was, let's try lowering the speed limit. Let's put out pretty much flags and stop signs. And I believe speed bumps are gonna be installed after the winter.
In April.
In April. Thank you, council member. So that is kind of where we sit. I'd say the folks who are old enough to remember kind of when this started and beyond are satisfied with where we are. We're waiting and seeing what's gonna happen to Staron Road. We're gonna kind of feel out the student body, see if they still think there is concern to be had. If not, fantastic. The issue is solved. If they do think there's still a safety concern, we'll go back to the drawing board. That's background, that's this bill. I'd like to open up for questions, and keeping in mind we have Michael Gorman here as well. Any questions?
By the way, Staron Road, if you were to look right out this window, for anyone who may not be familiar, is the road that you would cross to get from the bookstore to the academic side of campus over to the North Mall here. So, any questions? That's just a bit of added context as well. Deputy Speaker Patricus?
In the first, therefore be resolved, it specifically mentions 3 different shared governance groups, but not WSG. And I guess I'm just curious as to why our student government was left out.
I was not consulted during the period when this bill was written. I'm not aware of any other director being consulted or the speaker. Senator Bolt.
When you say Staron Road, are you talking about a segment of it or the entire road itself?
When I talk about, sorry, Senator. When I talk about road closure, the proposed closure was from Warhawk Drive, the one you paint purple, right, until just past the bookstore, so that traffic could still get in behind the bookstore for deliveries and whatnot. That's what the closure was. Now with signs and things like that, it really extends from the bookstore down to like Pulliam and to Prince Street, which is what runs next to the Young Auditorium.
I would just add 2 pieces, thank you, so, yeah, 2 pieces. The reason why there's a boulevard on Staron Road is that the university paid for calming processes, our own safety department on our campus put together a plan at no cost to the city and provided that, and that's why we have a boulevard with all the trees and stuff in it. So this has been an issue for, no, I won't say as long as you've been alive, but pretty long, right? I would encourage you to take a look at the data or ask about the data. The one piece of data we didn't collect is the number of students that cross that that road every day, or pedestrians who might be faculty or staff either. So that I would add that to the piece of information.
And I can add about 4,000 students live in the residence halls. That helps. And just about all their classes are going to be on this side of Staron Road, and they all live on that side of Staron Road for the most part, minus Pulliam. So, any other questions? Senator Pennell?
Would that closure also move the crossing guard down by Mohawk Drive, I believe it is?
Yes, it would. And with the current solutions they've come up with, there's still a crossing guard outside Moraine Hall, the bookstore. But with the road closure, yes, it would move it outside of Pulliam Hall.
Any other questions?
I'd like to add, it's my understanding that when this was written by the Academic Staff Assembly, that this was, there's some concerns from members of that body. They're similar to us, right? If something goes to the speaker, goes to the chair, it has to be put up from the members to vote on. And many of the members, or senators you can call them, have concerns about what they'll do to traffic on Main Street, as there have been accidents and deaths on Main Street. I believe that's why this bill is proposed. And Michael, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but this isn't, this was not written for, what I'm looking for, convenience. It's not written for convenience, it was written for another concern on Main.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Oh, I'm so sorry, my bad.
From the gallery, I heard that. That's accurate.
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment. Generally, most of the comments that I get as academic staff chair focuses on concerns that even though most of the traffic, when the test closure didn't shift to Main, some of it did. And a lot of these staff are concerned that Main is a more dangerous street and putting more traffic on it basically means any safety gain on Starin is lost on me.
Thank you. Senator Whedon?
Can I have clarification? Are we voting on this evening?
Yes, we are voting on this evening.
And then can I ask a follow-up? Can we have clarifications on voting aye to this would mean and do or benefit?
If the Senate decides to vote in favor of this, it would be an endorsement of this and essentially signing us on, and we'd add our names to this box out here, and we're gonna put the vote. And so when it goes to the Chancellor's office, it'll show that WSG is in support of it. That's voting aye. If you vote the opposite, same thing, we'd add our name to the box and say we rejected it or refused to endorse.
Senator Carter?
Just point of information for the new senators and that, where can we find the data that Advisor Bilgan was talking about, so that way, all students know, and, so.
I can get that for you. It was collected in joint between the city and Brenda Jones, Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs. I can get that data for you. I'll tell you what was most shocking was that most of the traffic went to Schwager, back by the football field. That had a statistical difference. If I remember correctly, there was no statistical difference on Main Street. In fact, we could track just about how many cars were not on Stair Road. We could track going down Prairie and across Main.
Director Smith?
I can also provide a bit of perspective in that City Council is simultaneously focusing on pedestrian safety on Stair Road as well as pedestrian safety on Main Street. There are numerous places where a discussion is happening. There's a subcommittee specifically dedicated to pedestrian safety. The Public Works Committee just spoke about this. Somewhere else, there's a joint committee with the school board overseeing pedestrian crossing for school students, which directly relates to Main Street. So I will add that that is a dual focus. And I'd also add that the vote to not actively close the road at this time was a 4-3 vote of the City Council. And so we will be reviewing in April and potentially adding temporary speed bumps, and then we will re-review again in June.
My only concern with this legislation, and do with this what you will, is as there will be a re-vote, it was a close vote to begin with, that endorsing this will kind of tie our hands. And what if a road closure is the best solution moving forward, something were to happen, or God forbid, things don't get better with the current solutions. I just think it ties our hands and might make it a little more difficult for us to make a compelling argument in the future if in the past we came out opposed to a road closure. I don't think a road closure is really anybody's ideal solution. Goal is that everything out there now works just fine. But I would like to mention I'm very appreciative of Professor Gorman for the conversation with me to express that this was purely out of further safety concern on Main Street.
Senator Bolt?
I would like to inquire in the first whereas, it mentions that there is an absence of crossing guards. Previously, just a few minutes ago, it was stated that there was one by the bookstore, but there is not one currently near the Polium six-pack sector, I guess we'd say, the Drumlin area. Has there been anything since the WSG ourselves mentioning to the university about that absence of crossing guards? Has there been an improvement in that regard? Because I find myself feeling more safe, at least, when there's actually someone designating it. You may cross, you may not.
Thank you for your question, Senator. A couple of directors here, myself, have had conversations with the chief and the police department because it's our CSOs, our campus security officers, who are the crossing guards. I believe that they're having a difficult time hiring right now. They are actively hiring on Handshake. If you're interested, please go apply. But it's tricky to get students to want to work. Supposedly they have good pay. I haven't looked into it myself. Do you have a comment on pay?
$13.50 an hour.
$13.50 an hour. Is it the highest for a student on campus?
I believe so.
Yeah. We believe so. So if you're interested or know anybody interested, please urge them to apply. We can only do what we can do with so many crossing guards, right? Ideally, we'd have them at both, I mean, we only have so many bodies to work with. So, to answer your question, to sum up, yes, it's been noted. Yes, they're trying to come up with a solution. Thank you for your question.
I just wanted to, I believe you mentioned it earlier, but I just want to be absolutely clear on the point. This document was developed without any input from any member of Whitewater student government.
I was not consulted personally. I don't want to say any member of any student government. Just I was not consulted. I believe this was written by a member of the Academic Staff Assembly. So I don't know who from which org and which positions helped draft this. If that answers your question. To my knowledge, nobody from our organization was consulted.
Any other questions?
I can address this one, quick one. The origin of the resolution was in response to the chancellor saying that, well, WSG has been extensively involved, and therefore he knows kind of where WSG stands. There have been no formal responses from any of the other governance groups. And so the reason WSG wasn't involved was that we were being told by the chancellor. I'm hearing from WSG all the time on this. And so this was a response then from the other governance groups where there had been no formal responses before. That is why WSG wasn't included, because it was responding to the chancellor's comment to us.
To that point, I just have a question. Then do we know who brought this bill to us this meeting this evening? Like who appointed it for us to look at?
I did.
You did?
It was actually never sent to me. We found it on a faculty senate agenda.
Yeah.
I thought it was very important to bring to this body, as the first 4 words of this bill are the Whitewater student government.
Parliamentarian Earl.
So there were no plans to share the document titled A Shared Governance Resolution with one of the 4 shared governance groups, the student government?
I don't want to speculate on anybody's intentions. I don't know. The first 3 groups could have voted on it and sent it to us. I don't want to speculate on what the intention was. It's here now. Let's discuss it and let's vote on it.
Director Smith.
I'm just noting in the 8th whereas, it mentioned cell phone use of pedestrians. Do you know if that's been like a recorded concern of students? And if, I'm genuinely curious, do you know if pedestrian laws change if a pedestrian were to be distracted and on their phone on the road? I know a lot.
No, it does not change. It does not matter if a pedestrian's on their phone, playing a game of hopscotch, picking their nose, don't matter. They're a pedestrian, they have the right of way.
$300 fine.
Yeah. It depends on your definition of has it been recorded. It's been mentioned at city common council meetings and whatnot, so on the record, I suppose. But I have not heard anything from students about this issue. I emailed the common council earlier this semester, or actually last semester, when they made this decision. I wanted to clear up a few things. One of those points was that this isn't a pedestrian issue. It's not a driver issue, right? Because if pedestrians put their phones down, well, drivers should too. It's a visibility issue. It's a difficult road to navigate and to see. And that's why we're proposing some changes. It's no one person or one group of people's fault.
Senator Hughes.
Yeah, so not really about legislation or any of the wording, but just a general question. By the crosswalks, there's a sign that says, stop for pedestrians. It's like a white sign that has like a red stop sign on it, and it says stop for pedestrians. I think there could be like some confusion on whether that means like stop at all times or stops when there are only pedestrians crossing. So I guess like kind of just to clarify like what that sign actually means.
I believe it means stop for pedestrians. If you have, I would urge you to reach out to your constituents and see if they have similar concerns or questions. I've seen that sign elsewhere, and I know what that means, but I think talk to your constituents about it. That means stop when pedestrians are present or crossing.
So it doesn't mean just like stop, like all the time, even when there are no pedestrians?
Nope, that would be just a normal stop sign.
Okay, I'm just clarifying.
Well, thank you for your question.
Senator Callan.
I move to call the question.
Has to be seconded. And voted
Who
on.
did a second?
I'll second that.
Now you can vote on voting.
Wonderful. We move into discussion on that.
No, not debatable, I don't believe.
All right, with that, we will move into a roll call vote on voting, so that's what call the question means in this case, as said earlier by the parliamentarian. Madam Clerk, I'm ready. Please call the roll.
Aye.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Martin, did you call me? Nay.
Senator Esterhol,
Aye.
Senator Rose,
Aye.
Senator Gotzoff,
Aye.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Kelvin,
Aye.
Senator Michael,
Aye.
Senator Miller,
Nay.
Senator Patricus,
Aye.
Senator Punzel,
Aye.
Senator Purnell,
Nay.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Nay. She thinks so. Alrighty, in a vote of 12 to 4, we will be ending discussion and moving on to the vote. So with that, we will move into the vote.
Weren't we in questions, not discussion?
We were in questions.
So we will move into discussion.
No, the motion was to call the question, which is why it was opposed. So now we skip this. So now there will be no opportunity for discussion. We must move into the vote on the question.
Madam Clerk?
Can I just clarify what each vote would mean?
Yeah.
So a vote of aye, you would want to endorse a bill that is opposed to a closure. A vote of nay, you would be against endorsing a bill that opposes the closure.
Senator Bolt,
Aye.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Nay.
Senator Esterhol,
Aye.
Senator Rose,
Aye.
Senator Gotzoff,
Nay.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Kelvin,
Nay.
Senator Michael,
Aye.
Senator Miller,
Nay.
Senator Patricus,
Nay.
Senator Punzel,
Aye.
Senator Purnell,
Nay.
Senator Schmidt,
Nay.
Senator Wheaton,
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Nay. Wonderful. In a vote of 8 to 8, we've tied and we will be re-voting. Oh, so leadership breaks the tie. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a question about that, I just asked for us to pull it, is, a tie means that the motion fails. There is not a clause that you automatically re-vote or go to, Senate leadership for an additional vote. I believe, hold on, I'll look if you give.
No, that's correct. Apologies, I was thinking of something else. In the event that tie, the motion fails.
Wonderful. In an 8 to 8 tie, the motion's failed. All right, and with that, we will move into item C, S242505, creation and establishment of the same priorities process. Passing the gavel officially. Deputy Speaker Patrice.
This is what you want to do. Stuart, you understand that?
All right, Senator, do you have the floor? Whenever you're ready.
So the legislation you see before you is comprised largely of two parts. Some of it is from the first bill we saw this semester, which is just some changes to committees, making chairs, or associate directors officially co-chairs of the committee. What?
Man, turn it on.
Is it not? Oh. Apologies. Making associate directors officially co-chairs of committees, etc. And it reflects the amendments which were made on the floor of the Senate before it was referred to committee. The second part of the legislation is creating a new section of the standing rules to create a new process for the creation of goals. The reason why we have created this is so that we can make it clear what the Senate wants to focus on for the upcoming senatorial term, as well as give a way for senators to focus their energies towards specific issues so that they can work, so that they can more easily gather and collaborate on gaining solutions to those issues.
Wonderful. And with that, we'll kind of walk you through the process that's been outlined. So this here, section 8.2, will look relatively familiar based on the last piece of legislation. You saw what that does is it switches around vice chairs a bit, allows them to be elected from within the committee. But as we scroll down, section 13 would be the newly added section, and it's the majority of what this legislation is proposing. So if you see here, I'll walk through kind of each point, but more than walk through each point, we'll together walk through what this process would look like if and when implemented. So at the first Senate meeting, at the start of the Senate term, which means in the spring, the Senate will be informed about Section 13, which is what you'd be looking at now, of the standing rules and the duties under it. You're about to find out exactly what that would look like. Item B, each senator shall prepare a legislative priority proposal using the legislative priority proposal template. Blake, if you could scroll down to the template. We'll get into this template a bit more at the very end, but here is exactly what that template would look like. So you would do one of those templates by the beginning of the second meeting. And then, wonderful. At the second meeting of the spring semester, each of those proposals made by every senator will be assigned a number by the clerk and speaker, printed and then placed in the meeting packet, and each proposal will be read aloud in its entirety to the Senate by a Senate officer. Then it's important to note each proposal will be anonymous until the third meeting of the spring semester, and then once all proposals have been read, voting will begin with each senator possessing 3 votes. Blake, if you'd like to go.
Yes, so so the reason why each senator has 3 votes is to prevent a tie between all the proposals. The top 10 proposals will advance to the next stage of the process. What this next stage looks like is, scrolling down so you get point E, which is where each proposal will be reviewed by the relevant internal committee. Which is the relevant internal committee will be decided by the speaker on the floor of the Senate. So for example, if there's a proposal on the floor, broadly speaking, to talk about internal changes, the speaker will most likely designate that to Constitutional Revision Committee. Now very importantly, every decision that the speaker makes will be open to change by a motion from a senator on the floor of the Senate. That's why he announces them immediately after the voting finishes. In the following week, so the week between the second meeting of the semester, where all proposals are introduced and whittled down to 10, and the meeting immediately following that, every committee that has been sent a proposal must meet to review the proposal. They will put together a pros and cons list, which will deal with the potential impact of each of the proposals. We have included some fail-safes at each step of the processes to provide avenues to ensure the work gets done. For example, if internal committees can't meet in person, they can pursue a virtual version of the process, and we've included a line in there to ensure that no one's held responsible for the committee not meeting if it's due to scheduling errors, since obviously scheduling errors aren't anyone's fault. Then after each of the committees has reviewed it, they will be referred back to the Senate, at which point we will review them at the third meeting of the Senate.
So at the third meeting of the Senate, each proposal will then be read aloud in its entirety. The pros and cons for each proposal that the internal committee had deemed will also be read. And then the initial submitter, so it has now gone from an anonymous submitter to the submitter of the proposal, will have 5 minutes to present and argue in favor of their proposal. This will be followed by a discussion of the proposal. It's important to note, discussion will be limited to a maximum of 10 minutes with a possible 5 minutes extension by a simple majority vote. And then following discussion, all remaining proposals will be voted on, and each senator will have 1 vote. The top 4 from that vote will move to the next stage of voting, where each proposal is then voted on. All proposals will be read aloud, and any proposal receiving a 2/3 majority vote will become an official priority for the Senate for the remainder of the Senate term. Additionally, what's important to note is that legislative priorities can be removed as priorities through a written motion submitted to the Speaker by noon on Friday. The reason that's submitted to the Speaker by noon on Friday is because you can't add business to the agenda. And then at the third meeting of the fall semester, the Senate shall entertain a motion to have the committee that initially reviewed the proposal review the work and continued necessity of that priority. And the committee will submit a report of their findings to the Senate at the earliest opportunity. Following that report, senators can motion to amend or completely remove the priority. This motion will require a 2/3 vote to pass. If no priorities reach the 2/3 threshold, so let's say voting takes place and you'll be voting on 4 priorities and only 2 of them receive a 2/3 majority, the Senate will only have those 2 priorities for the remainder of the senatorial term.
Now we come to what I view as the reason this legislation is on the floor and the ultimate outcome of these goals, which is point J. The Speaker will assist in organizational groups to discuss the context of and steps to accomplish the Senate's legislative priorities. So, for each legislative priority that is approved, there will be a group formed to discuss it. The Speaker will help coordinate schedules so every senator interested in that priority finds time to get together to talk about it. I cannot stress enough, these are not committees. These will not do any work. They will not propose solutions. They are discussion groups. They are a way for senators to get together at a designated time to talk about a designated issue. So every senator can gain the full context of a situation and bounce ideas off of each other. Once you do that, you can then move on to the further stages of finding a solution, speaking to relevant stakeholders like the relevant directors, writing a piece of legislation to take to a relevant committee, all of those steps. This is supposed to be a shove to begin work on the things that the Senate feels are the top priorities of the Senate.
And then there's just that final clause at the bottom where we update the effective date, noting that this will go into effect, effective immediately. With that, and then here is the Appendix F again, which is the priority template. So I'll leave this here for a moment. If you'll notice, it's translated to Latin, so there's no actual priority listed. This is the template that will be followed as you write that first priority at the second Senate meeting of the term. With that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, unless you have anything else, Mr. Parliamentarian.
Nope.
William.
Cool. We'll now move into probably the most important part, the questions. Yeah, fire away. Senator Bull.
Point of information, in the 8.2 internal committees, communications is still listed under 8.2E, but in 8.2F it is then removed entirely. May I ask as to why the reason is for that?
You're looking at 8.2E.
Correct.
Okay. Right here?
Yes, it has communications listed right before the highlighted text, and 8.2F is crossed out as if to signify it is going to be removed from the standing rules. You would just.
You passed it.
I can answer that one. 8.2F gives the communications committee like some special provisions, like having the deputy speaker as the vice chair and giving it a specific purpose. But this will remove those special provisions and just make it have the same, I guess, guidelines as student affairs, academic affairs, and then now the intergovernmental affairs committee. Dr. Reiser?
So what would the dynamic be between like directors and us chairing the internal committees and the senators? Because I guess my main concern is obviously that collaboration is super important, and that's like really why I value the internal committees, is being able to talk with senators and hear everyone's thoughts. But my concern is that this could interfere with the typical processes that like we as directors follow with consulting stakeholders and being in the meetings that we typically are in, and tending to have information that isn't necessarily broadcasted right away. That's the main concern.
That's a great question, and I think me, Blake, and Nathan were really intentional on drafting this legislation in that I mentioned earlier today, actually, when Advisor Bilgin was mentioning to Heath Houston's question, how do we write legislation, and I mentioned that piece of paper we have printed. The first step is identifying identifying the problem and then going to relevant stakeholders, whether that be y'all as directors or relevant campus stakeholders, if that makes more sense. So really, the idea of this legislation is not at all designed to infringe on that process and the way those internal committees operate, but instead to embolden senators to begin the first step more consciously. So by having the senators sit and think about, what do we want to move toward? This process then begins the moving toward, and they can continue to utilize internal committees in the same way they have been. They can continue to utilize directors in the same way they have been. This entire legislation is about establishing a process to begin at the beginning of that process, if that makes sense. If you'd like to add anything, you're welcome.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this legislation is really meant to serve as a tool for senators to just get them started on the process. And part of that, a step in that process, as we outlined earlier, of getting legislation through, is communication with directors and the relevant committees. This is a new pre-step. This is to help the initial idea, which leads to those discussions being necessary, form.
Yeah, no problem. So, I appreciate that answer. So for example, like I meet with Marissa, she's the advising director. When you're talking about like the pre-steps, is the expectation with these like smaller groups to like go and consult with like these stakeholders?
No, these discussion groups, as I mentioned, are not to take any action. They are discussion groups, and that's the period at the end of their role. They are for senators to get together and discuss. I'm sure any directors would be welcome at the groups to share their thoughts, but it's just for senators to talk about an issue, try to create an idea, and then once they have an idea, moving down the process. So at no point will any senators or these groups do anything out of the ordinary, like consult, like going around directors to consult with members of administration. All that the discussion group does is form the idea. That is their entire purpose. They don't do anything beyond the formation of an idea.
Another follow-up?
How do you plan to ensure that there isn't kind of this workaround that could happen?
Ensure that there isn't a workaround. Can you clarify?
That senators would just reach out and talk to.
So that's a great question. I have a personal story that I'll tell. my freshman year, me, Nick Petrikis, and Doug Bradley, we scheduled a meeting with Terry Tombarello because we had some housing concerns. And there's nothing I would advise a senator to do less than randomly put a meeting on the executive director of interim executive director of housing's calendar. Without the director of student affairs, Matthew Schweiner, knowing. We stepped all over his work. It was really, really bad, and we should not do it again. So how do we ensure that it doesn't happen? Procedurally, you can't. I mean, like we jumped right over, right? But in terms of interacting as people in the process, we can do what I just did, which is encourage senators to not overstep the directors, to instead utilize that identify step by going to, instead of scheduling a meeting with John Chenoweth, they go to Abby and they say, hey Abby, I really have this concern. I think Provost Chenoweth is the best option, the best outlet. Do you think that's the case? Could I be in the meeting? Is there information that might be shared there that I can't be there for? And if so, can you tackle this issue for me? So I think in the handling of that, right, some of those process issues are issues that this piece of legislation isn't designed to tackle, but that this legislation doesn't at all get in the way of, and we can continue to defend against with our rhetoric.
I'll just add on that I actually think that rather than exasperating an issue, this will actually act as a bit of a balm to it, because the reason why senators are most likely to try to contact administration directly is if they're not sure of what the next steps are and they don't feel like they have an outlet for accomplishing change. Well, this gives them an outlet, and then in that discussion group they can figure out what next steps they might want to take, which will almost assuredly weed out any ideas of going straight to administration figures.
Do you want to follow up?
Yeah, can you provide a little bit more clarity on the difference between the conversations that'll happen in our internal committees versus these small groups? Because again, I completely am all for that collaboration that is happening. I just don't, I guess the concern would be that you have a cohort of senators that feel incredibly strongly about a topic, and then some people weren't in that conversation that are in these internal meetings, and then they feel swayed to agree with that group that has more of power, I guess you could say. But so could you provide a little bit of clarity on that?
So to be clear, your question is, how are these working groups different than an internal committee?
Yes.
So, wonderful. So an internal committee is, when I assign those committee assignments, those folks who serve on that committee are voting members. And also, as we spoke about earlier, it gives them some access to directors in that committee. But those meetings are open to the student body, and I would assume that if someone who was a senator in this room, wasn't on academic affairs, came in and expressed a concern during that time, it would be well valued, and as long as it fit within the parameters of the agenda, it would make a ton of sense. The difference between these discussion groups are essentially, if anyone frequents the office, you'll see me, Blake, me, Doug, people who aren't, any of the people I just mentioned, frequently working through issues. They'll be putting together legislation, coming up with plans to meet with different relevant stakeholders, and those plans, that discussion is what these discussion groups are. These discussion groups are not designed to create action levied against the provost or Terry Tombarello. They're discussion groups that are designed to do exactly what senators should be emboldened to do: get together, talk about issues, and then take the first step. Does that help? I mean,
Yeah. Do you believe that it's necessary to have this process formalized when, like you're saying, those small groups kind of naturally happen?
yeah, I mean, I would say, in my time in the Senate at least, it has been disappointing that those small groups haven't formed as much as I think they could have in the past. And me and Blake sat and we put our heart and soul into this piece of legislation because we believe so strongly that this is the best way
to begin encouraging those conversations to be had. And I'll let Blake continue, but I think we have seen in the past that those conversations aren't being had at the prevalence that we want them to, and this is what we think the best next step is.
I just frankly don't know how you can. I don't think you can make an argument that those conversations have been happening naturally for whatever reason, and this is a problem which I think basically every member of the org who's been around long enough to observe the org agree is happening, which is why we sat down and began having conversations. What is the best process to solve this issue? And after a good deal of deliberation, a good deal of debates, this is what we came to as the best possible option for alleviating that problem and making sure that the Senate reaches its full potential.
I have a follow-up, but I'll let them talk.
Advisor voters.
Just two things. I think it's always good to have people come together and talk about their thoughts or things that might be something that they want to know more about, right? I mean, legislation is traditionally the last step, right? I think we've always said that and worked that way. We're really talking about talking and writing sessions. When I look at this, I see how complex it is. I see how much work you put into it. I don't know if it's the natural first step. And I think there could be some other ways to explore it. But something that's not addressed, at least in my cursory listening to what you're saying, is you need to be careful. If half of this group wants to talk about Dunkin' Donuts, right, there'll be quorum at that meeting. So that would be the one piece that I don't see just structurally that's not addressed in here, right? That there should be some, because it's, even if you're just sitting in the room, in the office, and there's that many of you there, you would be in violation of open law. So just something to think about as you move forward. If it passes, how you want to implement it.
I will just briefly mention that there is argument to be made that no matter how many members of WSG attend these discussion groups, they won't be in violation of open meeting laws, because the key facet of open meeting laws is that you meet to carry out work of a group that's designed to meet in public. And since these groups would not be taking any action, you could argue that they are not fulfilling any work of the Senate. That being said, it is an easy enough issue to take care of, since the speaker will have a role in organizing these, and can just send out a notice that they're happening, which would be enough to avoid any violations.
Advisor voting, do you have a follow-up comment for that?
No, I just think it's important we disagree. I believe that you will be talking about issues that are important to students that you represent. So in the broadest sense of open meeting law, to me, I like to just be super careful. So I would include that would be a priority of the speaker to do that. But I think the problem with that is that if Doug walks in because he just finished an exam and he's interested in the conversation, it makes it hard for people to just join in and be included in a more organic kind of hop in and chat kind of way. Now that doesn't always happen either, right? So it's just trying to make sure that we're being I hate the word transparent because I think it's overused, but as clear as we are, that people can give you their opinion and that you're not doing the work or caucusing basically in those sessions. That's all I got. Thank you.
Senator Bull.
I apologize for backtracking to section 8 again. I think you guys have done a wonderful job so far with your presentation. In section,
Thank you.
Section 8.2K, regarding the EEC and KA more specifically, the removal of the mention of upon appointment of the speaker, who then appoints the senators to the EEC?
I would say upon appointment of the speaker is just redundant there. So throughout the standing rules, because it's an internal committee, upon appointment is just upon appointment of the speaker. It's just a redundancy that makes sense to eliminate.
That's just a clerical thing that was made to, I think, keep consistent with other committees, how they're worded. Senator Calhoun?
Just a quick point of information. This is a procedure that would happen once per year, as this procedure would start in, just to clarify, this would start in the fall and go through the spring. This wouldn't be done every semester, correct?
This would start in the spring and go through the fall. So the start of the legislative season is the spring.
With the option of changing at the beginning of the fall semester, since we generally have a large intake of new senators, and it'll probably be enough time between the beginning to see if there are any changes needed to be made to the priorities.
Director Smith?
I would ask, how do you expect that the formalized Senate priorities would interact with the priorities that are set by directors in multiple phases, such as our appointment, the beginning of our roles, the start of each semester, and through work within the cabinet meetings every week?
That's a great question, and it was brought up a lot by President Bradley in Constitutional Revisions Committee. And I think the way that they interact, I think is actually quite a nice synthesis. What that looks like to me is, number one, these aren't WSG priorities, they're Senate priorities. So what that means is this is a way for senators to levy their energy at important topics that they deem ones that are facing students. Now, those could be completely in contrast to the priorities that were mentioned by President Bradley earlier in this meeting. He sends out his own priorities to the chancellor, and I think the way those things interact, the way these priorities interact with directors, is they give directors more knowledge of what senators are really hungry to tackle. I mean, I would maybe ask you a question. I think it would be a benefit if more directors understood, whether it's a fault of the Senate not communicating it or not, where the senators sat on important issues. And I think that this establishment of this priorities process allows senators to say exactly where they sit on particular issues. And then when those important committee meetings happen, directors have an opportunity to know, oh, I didn't know that the Senate is huge on outreach, but physical outreach. And now that I know that that's a part of the priorities, when I advertise for an election, we'll do more chalking and tabling. Or if your initiative is to not do more chalking and tabling, because that's the directive you've been given by the presidential priorities or your own executive priorities, the way it interacts is you now know exactly how the Senate feels on that, and it is completely within your purview as a chair of that internal committee to say we're going in this direction. And I think that's like the beauty of governance, is that sometimes those priorities have to mix.
I understand what you're saying. I would ask, however, how that differs from work I can do within my own committee. The first meeting of every semester, I ask my senators what they would prefer to work on. So I would just ask where that differs.
Well, once again, these discussion groups are not meant to take the place of committees. They're formed around specific issues to allow senators to discuss within them. Committees are for when you gather senators together and the director and the senators might bring forward issues, and then you decide, the committee works on figuring out what action can be taken to address those. So you have a couple of differences. One, committees, very broad authority. They can bring up new issues, eliminate old ones at any meeting, and then most importantly, figure out action. These discussion groups, one issue all year, and all they do is discuss ways to figure it out. And then if they think they have a way to figure it out, they then take it to committee and introduce it as an issue in the committee.
I guess I have one more follow-up. How will you navigate, for example, how will you avoid the duplication of labor? If an issue is brought up in a working group, might privately be working.
It's discussion group, not working group, and they don't do work, so they won't duplicate the work of the director.
And I would add, even if they're looking to begin doing work, it's likely that if their work was, in fact, likely to encroach on the work of a director, the way that that would likely happen is the discussion group would get together and say, we have a thing that we want to do. Let's say it's like we want to chalk for elections. I think the most rational first step in chalk for elections is we want to do something with elections. We'll go to the Intergovernmental Affairs Director and we'll say, hey, this is an idea our committee came up with. What do you think? Or this is an idea that the group came up with. What do you think? I don't think that the duplication of labor is likely. It's of course an issue that I think we may have to navigate as a Senate leadership, and I think we're prepared to do that if necessary.
I suppose I mean more. If I have taken time in my office hours, and we all live a hypothetical, I've taken time in my office hours to put together ideas for outreach that include shopping, and then the not work group, apologies, meets and discusses, and they're like, we should shop, and we both had these thoughts. Who has wasted their time?
No one. I think what just happened is beautiful and shows how important chalking is. And then we'll all go chalk together. So whether or not that ends up in your committee through the discussion group or not, I think that as long as the chalking gets done, and as long as it's, we're not creating two completely separate chalking initiatives and the same folks are working on the same thing, I think that's a win.
Dr. Radley?
So if these priorities are in contrast with one another, how is that going to influence the relationship between the Senate and the cabinet? Because I do think it's important that we all want, all of us of course want these priorities to happen, but if the Senate gets frustrated that perhaps that initiative isn't moving as fast as it could, but it's because the work of, let's say, advising, that's a very easy one to use. It is such a large scale thing. And then if you all of a sudden said, this semester we're gonna completely revamp advising, but then the Senate gets frustrated that that work is very hard to do, how is that going to impact that relationship?
So I think there were kind of two things. Early on you mentioned contradiction, and I don't think there would be any significant scenario where they directly contradict each other. There wasn't going to be a situation where the director is like, I want to fix advising, and the Senate's like, I want to make advising worse. So there will just be different perspectives on how to do that, and then senators might get together and discuss and then take some of their ideas to the director, and then the director, having the context, will either go, maybe the ideas will be helpful in something they haven't thought of, maybe they'll be like, well, this is an idea that I already disqualified for this reason, and then the director might be able to move forward the same or in an improved way, but at least the center had a chance to figure out some possible ideas and have some input on the process. As for growing frustrations, maybe because we don't have we don't understand why an issue is taking too long. I think that is another one of these issues which currently could exist in the Senate that this legislation doesn't really create. All the directors who are hired are very eloquent, very capable of explaining themselves. So I don't think there's a realistic scenario where there will be action taking place by the director, which they are not able to explain to the Senate why it isn't taking so long, except if it's confidential, in which case I think the long-standing precedent has been to put trust in the directors that they are handling that confidential information well.
Again, I appreciate your answer for that. This is a different question. How are the small groups going to be formed in a different way than the committees?
Yeah, so that's perfect. So if we go down to the bottom here, the speaker will assist in the organization of groups to discuss the context and next steps of the Senate's legislative priorities. So we kept that slightly ambiguous for a reason, because it could be a when to meet, it could be an Outlook event, it could be tomorrow these three people want to meet in the office to speak on dining. So your question, to rephrase, was how are they going to be different in committees.
And I just want to provide a little bit more, because I guess the concern is, let's say you have like 3 senators in the office, and then you have a large group that's not in there. Are you planning on broadcasting every single time a small group meets so that it is like inclusive? Because I'm concerned about clickiness and people not feeling completely welcome if they weren't aware of it, because there are often kind of like, you could say, the regulars in the office.
Absolutely.
And so I just think it's important that there is a process to ensure that everyone knows when those conversations are happening. But then again, that brings me to the concern of caucusing or quorum, because
Sure.
I mean, taking action, there are conversations happening, so I do believe
There are conversations happening.
in the small groups there would be, I believe that is action.
Yeah, so I agree. I actually agree with Jan and not Blake in this instance. I think it's better to be safer than sorry, and as the speaker will assist in the organization of those groups, I see a part of the assisting in that organization of saying, hey, there's possible quorum being met. This is what that looks like. It's 24 hours notice before those groups are met. And part of the reason we left this ambiguous is because I think it is kind of within the speaker organizing those discussion groups. It's in that is the filter, if you will, for when we're going to meet, if it makes sense, when these discussion groups are going to be able to kick off their discussions. And I think that is kind of the solution to the clicking and the quoruming problem. But I would say that, kind of similar to some of the other questions being asked, I think the clickiness of any organization, but particularly Whitewater Student Government, is like an extremely relevant concern, and one that this piece of legislation isn't particularly designed to address. And I think that's something that gets addressed by organizational leadership, and should continue to get addressed by organizational leadership with different fashions through maybe legislation down the line or through conversations.
I actually think this legislation does address clickiness concerns. Right now, ideas can only be discussed in cliques because it's just people who happen to run into each other or form relationships outside of the org and then discuss issues inside of the org. This brings the idea forming process into the public and puts it into a situation where all senators who want to be a part of it can be a part of that early discussion where ideas are formed on issues. So it actually, in my mind, avoids clickiness and breaks down that that traditional relationship in the org.
So just to clarify, are you planning on sending like an Outlook calendar invite? Like, how do you plan to broadcast this to everyone?
Are you asking, so the legislation plans to broadcast it by allowing the speaker to assist in the organization of groups. If you're asking me as speaker, I think a when to meet probably makes some sense, maybe an Outlook calendar invite, but we left it ambiguous because the standing rules are designed to serve the folks of the time who are serving in the body at the time. And I think this line being left ambiguous allows for the organization of those groups to be as transparent as possible, but for also to be as organic as possible and say, well, this group wants to do a when to meet, but maybe the speaker who serves next term, they'll want to do an Outlook invite, or maybe some cool new AI technology will come out and we'll want to use that to schedule. Blake's pretty anti-AI. He didn't like that I said that. But yeah, so I mean, the legislation addresses it by saying the speaker will assist in the organization of those groups.
I believe the Senate's currently at 44% capacity. Have the submitters or Senate leadership thought about maybe focusing first on getting additional Senate seats filled, at least half of them, before focusing on bureaucratic standing rules changes?
Can I sort of jump in there? We're at 59% full, just for clarification. We have 16 filled seats out of 27. But, sorry, not to interrupt.
Still, I think 59%.
Rather, rather than being a bureaucratic change, this is rather meant to allow for the senators who are in and will in the future be in the org to get a start on actually accomplishing work while we pursue alternative methods to fill the Senate seats. I mean, you have in the past provided some praise for my outreach event. One of the prime ideas behind that outreach event is to increase awareness of the Senate on campus and therefore increase the number of seats. In the question, one of the questions on the surveys, which for things senators have to tell them, is how to get involved with WSG. And we have other initiatives going as well to spread awareness of the Senate, which will hopefully result in people filling Senate seats. But we can't just wait around and not give the senators who are currently having their seats we have to make sure they have the best chance possible to exercise their roles and contribute to positive change. And that's what this is trying to address. So I don't think we should put this on hold until we reach a possibly full Senate, which has never existed in the time I've been here.
So I would add that, I mean, I understand the hesitation, and I think it's a hesitation we frequently get into in any arena when we're trying to solve problems as we go. There may be an insufficiency here, so why would we do this now? And I think that's a really rational question. My response would be, I think if we were so unlucky to only have 3 of these seats full tonight, this would still be the right legislation to pass, because it not only arms current senators, but future senators, and I want the Senate full as much as you do, to begin the process of solving issues alongside the other organizational leadership. So I think this is the kind of legislation that pushes not only the current body forward, but the future body forward.
Senator Puzzle?
I move to call the question.
Mo.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Because he moved it.
Senator Collins? Second. All right. Madam Clerk?
Point of order, every motion made has to have discussion on the motion.
We'll move into discussion on the motion. Call the question.
I would encourage the Senate to vote no on the motion to call the question so that we can move into discussion portion, which is the portion which follows questioning, which is what we're currently in. And actually, this also, oh wait, I'm sorry. This motion can't go forward. It's in contradiction to the standing rules. We can only vote next week.
You can only vote on the legislation next week.
Yeah,
You can
so
vote
there's
to
no.
end
If
discussion.
the motion were to pass, we would end debate or end everything today and just be done.
It also doesn't allow for any content changes or amendments to be made to the legislation.
Which I do have content and clerical changes, so I encourage you all to vote no.
I have a point of clarification. If senators were to end Q&A today, would it be out of order for senators to ask questions outside of the meeting?
I wouldn't respond by saying out of order. I would respond by saying not best practices. So you can't stop people from being curious, right? And if discussion were to die right now, which I would highly advise it not to, then I'm sure some folks would have questions. And I'm sure it would be really hard to stop them from asking. But I think better said is it would be a really bad practice of governing to end before we get to discussion, so that we can, continue to learn about the legislation in front of us.
I would encourage you to interpret it this way, Mr. Deputy Speaker, who is in chair of the meeting currently, is interpret, because this is not debatable, but we are. So interpret the move to end discussion, be on the question and answer portion, and move on to any content changes. So end what we're doing now, content changes, allow that to happen because that is part of the legislative process and the standing rules. And then if someone wants to move to end that portion at some point, they're able to do so, but it doesn't stop the process that's outlined in the standing rules. And it still meets Robert's Rules of Order's expectations as long as we stop debating it.
I would also, okay, I just wanted to say that I think it's important to say no because there's large discussion. I've been holding on to some discussion points this entire questioning period because it's questions, discussion, and changes. Those are very important. And I think as senators, I urge you, there are some discussion points that I think are very valid that I've been holding on to that would help us maybe understand this more and maybe even help others understand. So I would just consider others' opinions and thoughts on this because thoughts have been held off till now, and now we're just stopping.
Advisor Voter, I have a, I guess, clerical question. If I ask for unanimous consent to end questions, is that allowable? And move right straight into content changes?
Well, the thing that's not allowable right now is what we're doing, which is
Okay.
debating, but a parliamentary inquiry, which I think is what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure we're just trying to stay close to the line. If you interpret the question on the table as being the piece of ledge, then voting to end, voting to call the question would move it through our process. Once you make that first vote, there is no real motion on the table tonight because of the way our legislative process happens. We don't vote until next week, right? So, but what you haven't done then is allow the legislative process to be in place, which allows time in front of the whole group to modify. But you'd have to be very happy with the gavel to not allow discussion except for a motion if that's what you're going to allow, right? So you can do it either way. To me, if you're representing students, my personal opinion is to end discussion and questioning the presenters and move into clerical changes and amendments and be done. And then if someone wants to limit debate at that point, they have the authority to do so as a voting member.
Senator Calvin?
Can we amend the motion to change? I don't know if this is possible under Robert's rules. Can we amend this motion to change to end questioning and move into discussion?
Because it was a motion, I don't believe we can amend it. I guess some information I can divulge is you don't have to move to call the question. You can just ask to call the question. And it's not a formal motion. We can just have a conversation rather than are bound by Robert's rules. For future reference.
Point of information. What's the interpretation we're doing for this motion?
Will you go to the parliamentarian on that one? Or the speaker?
My suggestion to the acting chair of the Senate would be to ignore the initial motion that was made as incompatible with the standing rules and that which would return us to questioning and then just ask, see if no one else had a question, move into amendments and clerical changes.
Enjoy the gavel. Either way.
Just please end this.
Do a thing.
Alright. I guess seeing as the original motion is not in line with the standing rules, we will return to questions. If someone would like to call the question and ask to end questions, they're more than welcome to, or we can keep asking questions. Senator Collins.
I'd like to end questions.
You just call the question. Which guy?
Senator Will, do you have a question or?
I have a question.
We'll do
Point
one
of
last
information.
question.
He has a point of information. Yeah.
One last question.
So the Senate can vary in terms of size. We have people that may leave one point and join the next. Is it possible for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks into a new Senate term for a upcoming senator to join one of these discussion groups?
These discussion groups are purely natural in nature, and so it's not like an internal committee. You wouldn't have to go to anyone formally and ask. Find out when they're meeting. Go.
We're moving into content changes now. Does anyone have any content changes?
No one's objecting to you, brother. Just keep leading.
No. Okay, I'll start. 13.1A. We can change section 13 of the standing rules to this process.
Not trying to be a jerk.
So read in its entirety at the first meeting of the start of the Senate term, parentheses, the beginning of the Senate session. The Senate shall be informed about this process and their duties under it. Can I get a second? Senator Collins?
Second.
Discussion? Any discussion?
It's your motion.
Parliamentarian?
With just a point of order, usually the person who made the motion begins by opening, and then someone who wants further comment on it will
Okay.
comment.
Nice and fun night, right?
Indeed.
Typically, I don't like referring to sections by their number because that number can change, and it's not always caught. I guess another example would be if you are ever a bit bored, you can read the standing rules and try and count how many times the Director of Community and Communications is referenced. It's more than once, and that director has not existed the entire time I've been here, I'm a student, so these things aren't always caught, so that's why I don't like referring to numbers. Speaker Wilson?
I would encourage everyone to vote aye on the amendment. It's a clerical thing. It helps us in future. For instance, if we wanted to add a new section and move these sections around, which you couldn't currently do because you can't edit certain sections of the standing rules right now. But if you wanted to, say, push section 6 to 7 and all sections accordingly, you'd have to come in here and change this. Whereas if we just make the amendment, we'd never have to do that.
I apologize for continuing discussion on this minute point any further. I just wanted to say that I read through other sections of standing rules and decided that it was most in line with the rest of the standing rules to refer to the section by the number, and that the concerns cited by the speaker and deputy speaker would be taken care of with just a bit of due diligence from whoever was rewriting the standing rules. So I would encourage everyone to vote no.
Alrighty. Next up to do roll call vote. Madam Clerk, you can call a roll call vote on the amendment. Whenever you're ready. Before you do that, Senator Collins?
Can you just repeat the amendment just for all the senators?
Yeah. So it's to change, can you highlight section 13 of these standing rules? It is to change that to this process.
Thank you.
Those 2 words. And if you can call roll, then.
Senator Bolt,
Nay.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Nay.
Senator Esmeralda,
Aye.
Senator Gross,
Aye.
Senator Visla,
Aye.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Calvin,
Aye.
Senator Miller, Senator Chambers,
Aye.
Senator Bundle,
Aye.
Senator Purnell,
Aye.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Aye.
Alright, with 12 to 2, the motion passes. I have another content change. In 8.2 C and then I, I'm going to remove that entire section. The senators made a motion to overturn assigned work if they have concerns about the assigned work. Assigned work can be overturned by a majority vote. Can I get a second?
Thank you.
Senator Reedman?
Second.
Moving to discussion, I'll start. I know why this was, I don't know why. I can assume this was added as an amendment to kind of get a check on the directors. So if I'm in a committee and I don't like what a director is doing, I can call a vote to try and get them moved, strike down the work. I don't think that's where the check should be. I think the check should be Senate leadership on the directors. So then rather than trying to convince the directors that their work is too much, you can come to me and I find myself to be very rational. I think you elect Senate leadership, you don't elect directors. I think the check should be Senate leadership on the directors rather than senators themselves on directors. Senator Irwin?
Committee work is a very internal process. It is meant to be handled between the director and the committee. So the director assigns work, the committee carries it out. This allows the entire process to remain full circle within the committee without involving an extra step of the deputy speaker. And I think that the committee would really be best equipped to handle this decision rather than the deputy speaker, who may not necessarily be a part of the conversations where the work was explained and discussed. And it's not, I also want to add that it's not necessarily about a check on the director. It is about allowing the senators to feel that they have some role in deciding the direction of the committee in an official way by writing it into the standing rules. And I think that with including this, senators will feel a connection to a deeper connection to the work, knowing that they have all accepted that it is something that they should be doing, which I think will give them greater motivation to complete it. And finally, I will add that the last time this amendment was on the floor of the Senate, it was approved overwhelmingly, which is why we chose to include it in the current standing rules, as it was previously a very popular idea among senators. So I would encourage everyone to vote nay on this amendment, as I think it's just it's basically a administrative matter, which I think will improve relationships between senators and directors by making them feel like they're just more like they're working together.
Supervisor?
I just have a little bit of clarification first. I do have a comment, but is it every time that work is administered to the committee that a majority vote is taken, or is it only when there's too much, or the senators feel there's too much work being assigned, that a majority vote is taken?
Technically. Thank you. No, this is a senator. So how this will work is that if something is assigned, like, I don't know, the director wants the senators to build a giant statue of the director, the senators can motion to cancel out that work, and then a quick vote, a simple majority would overturn that work. Of course, I'm sure that every committee would be happy to make giant statues of the directors if asked.
Okay, I completely understand that concern with work that would be that unrealistic, but I don't know if this is necessarily needed when I think that there does need to be an element of trust in the directors and the work that, I mean, senators are elected to help and do the work, and so putting trust in the directors that we're not going to hand out too much, I think is really important. And I think that it's important to understand, like, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens with directors, and so asking for some assistance is really helpful.
I think that all that's really required to address those concerns is having a bit of trust in the committees that they won't arbitrarily reject directors' assignments, that if this tool ever is used, which, to be quite frank, I strongly doubt it ever will be used, but if it ever used, then the senators have thought very deeply, very carefully, and have arrived at this decision.
Senator Calvin?
Just as a point of, if the question is about the threshold, maybe we should consider raising the threshold as a potential amendment to this. If we think that a simple majority is a quite easy bar, and I think the directors have some concern about that, maybe we could consider 2/3 or 3/4 or some excessive majority that would be so, the work is so arduous that a clear majority of the committee or an overwhelming majority would consider it, then I think that might be a more valid concern rather than a simple majority that might have issues where a director might have something and then half the committee just doesn't agree. Sorry, maybe this is out of order. I don't know if that's...
Is it a motion or just some discussion?
unless he wants to amend the motion, we'd have to wait to resolve this motion before he can make a new one.
Do you want to amend it, or is that a discussion?
Point of parliamentary. If your motion right now is to remove the procedure, I don't know, I technically can't amend it if it's being removed, right?
Yes. You can rewrite the motion entirely through amendments.
Yeah. You want to amend it, I would encourage you not to, but you're free to do whatever you want. Senator Carter?
Yeah, going off of that, I think the directors get paid because they do a lot of work. And if they ask us to do work, then they're needing assistance. And I think if we overturn it, I don't think that's fair to the directors because that's just putting them back at square one. So I feel like this should be, amended tonight and then maybe find different wording. But if a director comes up to me and asks me to do work, it's for good reasons and everything like that. And, we're elected to those committees for a reason and that, so, yeah.
I just wanted to point out a point that Deputy Speaker mentioned. He said that as senators, we elected Senate leadership, and they're there for us, so I don't know. I just wanted to make that, I don't know why it stuck out to me, but it just showed that, striking this and having them there for us, seeing that we voted for them, like previously mentioned, just that there might be a little bit different kind of support than from other leaders.
Director Smith?
I would certainly think that 2/3 or 3/4 is much more reasonable. I would add that in my experience, both as a director and as a senator, I have seen directors assign and personally assign tasks to a committee that has agreed to do those tasks, and then half of the group has not completed the task. And if a motion were to be made and then voted upon as unreasonable if it's filling out cells in a spreadsheet, I would question whether that's reasonable or unreasonable, or simply just not wanting to do the work. And the other question I would ask is, would this motion be made within committee, or would it be made and voted upon on the Senate floor? Because just reading this, it isn't clear.
Speaker Wilson?
So let me just, I think that, so the intention of the legislation was that the motion would take place within the committee, and I think that since the legislation is dealing with the internal matters of a committee, that would hopefully be understood, but we can look at an amendment to make it crystal clear that it happens within committee. I would also just like to add that one of the reasons why I support this is because I think if you give senators the option of saying no to assigned work and they choose not to take it, that will in turn increase their motivation in doing the work because they'll felt like they were part of the process instead of just being handed an assignment. They will have given their agreement by not striking it down, thus giving them an attachment to the work. And I also like to say that I have great faith in senators who serve on committee that they won't just, because there seems to be quite the concern that senators are just going to arbitrarily strike down work that they don't feel like doing. I have great confidence that senators who give their time to run for the Senate have a strong motivation to assist the students and understand that committee work is one of the best ways they can accomplish that, and so won't arbitrarily be striking down work. They'll only do it if there is a exceedingly good reason, which is apparent to large portions of the committee.
I will say that when directors do give the committee work, I would argue that that is us extending our invitation for them to be involved in the work. So to your point about this encouraging them to be in the work and be invited and feel welcome to do it, us asking for help, I think, is doing that and accomplishing that purpose.
If you have a relevant discussion to the motion on the floor, you can count.
It's just a correction of grammar. It's currently not asking them to do the work, it's telling them to do the work.
Does anyone have any other relevant discussion to the motion on the floor? If not, we'll move into a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, if you're ready.
Senator Bolt,
Nay.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Nay.
Senator Esmeralda,
Nay.
Senator Gross,
Aye.
Senator Getzlaff,
Nay.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Melvin,
Aye.
Senator Chukas,
Aye.
Senator Punzel,
Nay.
Senator Purnell,
Nay.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Aye.
With a vote of 8 to 6, the motion fails as it does not reach the required 2/3 majority. Content changes. Senator Collins?
My motion to amend the aforementioned section to a 3/4 vote.
Is there a second? Senator Bolt?
Second.
Moving to discussion.
I think the directors have valid concerns, and I think this would be a meaningful compromise to keep the tool to do it, but also raise the bar to do it. Since the Senate has deemed it necessary that we are going to have this tool, at least in the current legislation proposed, I think this is a more reasonable standard, whereas if you can get 3/4 of the committee, I think that's at least a higher bar to achieve so that we can balance the concerns of directors with the Senate.
Senator Bolt?
You just, I have a quick question to that.
Please keep all discussion around the motion. If it is, you can.
Yes, he mentioned, because you, this is for 2/3, but you mentioned 3/4.
Did I say 2?
You did.
I didn't say 2/3. Oh, well then.
I personally thought that 2/3 was a comfortable number. A lot of what we do here at the Senate is 2/3 majority, and Oren's input earlier helps, like, to hear it from the director perspective. I'd love to get their input on some more of this if possible.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Senator Calvin?
Can we just clarify the formal motion? I believe I confused myself. I do apologize.
It's to change the vote to 3/4. Technically, he said 3/4 if you ever record it for the meeting.
I do apologize.
No worries.
We knew what you meant.
Can we clarify, or I guess I ask for unanimous consent to change that to 3/4, just for clarification? Any opposed? Any seeing none? Senator Wiggman, do you have relevant discussion? Anyone have relevant discussion to motion on the floor?
Can we clarify what this means and what our action as senators is to this motion?
So if we were when you go into a vote right now, a vote of aye would be to change the, vote there from a simple majority or by a majority vote to a 3/4 majority vote. And then vote of nay is to keep it as is. Seeing no other discussion, we'll move into a roll call vote. Alright, so you can call that whenever you're ready.
Senator Bolt,
Aye.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Aye.
Senator Esserhol,
Aye.
Senator Gross,
Aye.
Senator Gussow,
Aye.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Belvin,
Aye.
Senator Patrigues,
Nay.
Senator Punzel,
Nay.
Senator Purnell,
Aye.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Aye.
Speaker Wilson.
Aye.
With one of 11 to 3, the motion passes. President Bradley?
Mr. Deputy, I'd like to entertain a motion. For the new folks, that means I'd like one of you to make a motion as I'm unable to. I'd like to postpone this resolution till next week. It's clear to me that there are some strong disagreements and questions held by the executives. And I think at this point, this bill is going to do nothing besides further divide Senate and executives.
Speaker Wilson?
I think we may have gotten a bit off track. I know some of you may be falling toward your seats, realizing.
Do you have a content change or would like to entertain a motion?
I don't want to entertain a motion. I have discussion, if possible, response to the motion.
Well, you can't
Once
make a
the
response to
motion
the
is
motion.
made,
There
then-
is no motion because he entertained, oh, and there we are.
I entertain to postpone this until next week, so that way there's more clarification between senators and executive board members and submitters.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Alright, discussion? Is there relevant discussion to the motion?
He gets to make the motion, talks first.
Senator Carter?
I agree with President Bradley. I mean, it feels like we're all divided right now, and I feel like if we give it a week to, senators can talk to the submitters about their opinions and everything, I think it would be just more clear instead of just trying to take all night to figure this stuff out tonight, so.
Speaker Wilson?
I think we may have all realized that it's nearly 10:03 now. And I understand the restlessness that some of you may feel in wanting to postpone this. I greatly do. I want to get to bed as well. I have breakfast in the morning. But I think clearly what we're seeing is discussion around a relevant topic, and that's this piece of legislation. A piece of legislation that I think most people in the room, given the question, at least senators, feel pretty strongly on passing. I guess we'll find out later. However, I think what's more important is that we're currently addressing I think one of the most maybe divisive pieces of the legislation, as highlighted here. This was a piece of the bill that we saw last week, an amended piece, a piece that we spent 30 minutes debating, and we ended here. I think we're seeing that debate come through again. Do I think this is a controversial piece of this legislation? I do. Do I think that it alerts folks to disagreements that may be in the room? I do. Do I think that's what we do in this room? I do. Do I think we should postpone? No. Because I really do feel like we're right at the finish line, and I understand how it feels right now like this clause is creating an amount of division that feels uncomfy for the organization. But I think as we move forward with this legislation, as we saw before, I don't think there's as much division as maybe the room feels right now at 10:04.
Parliamentary knowledge.
I would just like to say a bit on proper parliamentary procedure, which is that when there is disagreement within this org, where it is figured out is on the floor of the Senate. This right here. This is the time, this and next week's meeting is the time to figure out these divisions, see if there's any changes that we can agree on, compromises that we can agree on. That is not discussion which is meant to happen outside of this room. It's meant to happen here, now, and next week. So I see no reason to drag out this process any longer when we are in the process which is meant to assuage the concerns behind the motion.
Senator Reedman?
I'd just like to say that I feel strongly about disrupting discussion and something as important as this, as what we have right now. Believe it or not, even though you're exhausted and it's 10:05 and the dub already closed, that disrupting this, it's only gonna make this longer next week. And as senators, this is super important discussion. Like they said, we are so close to being done, whether you believe it or not. And just finish the discussion. We'll finish this part. Who knows, mate? Hopefully we'll be done. But as senators, this is what we signed up for when we stood up there and said why we wanted to be senators, whether we knew it or not, that there'd be long meetings. And I think disrupting discussion as important as this will only continue it to be next week. And then the week after, we'll still have to vote because we wouldn't finish discussion next week. So let's finish the discussion this week, because believe it or not, we're going to do this whole same thing next week until this is taken care of. So just consider that when discussing.
So I have a point of clarification, as well as my own thoughts. If we were to end up postponing, would all the previous clerical amendments still stay intact, or would those be null?
Yeah, we just pick up right here next week, delaying the whole process another week. So this becomes a 3-week process rather than a 2-week process.
My thoughts on the matter, I think that, with how vital this discussion is of really enhancing what it means to be a senator and take on the responsibilities. Take on the responsibilities of the student body that we represent. This is the dirty work of really making that change that we want to fight for. And there will always be some sort of decisiveness along the way. And if we stop here in front of adversity, I personally feel like it may be a sign of weakness that we aren't ready for these types of really controversial discussions. Maybe they're not as controversial as we think, just by getting some opinions around the room, but I would move against the movement. Yes.
Senator Buzzle.
I said the postponement should happen, mainly because we've been arguing over this one singular sentence for the last nearly hour and a half, and have gotten next to nowhere with it. Between, at this point, 2 motions to change just a simple number. At this point, let's just stop here, pick up where we leave off next week, when everybody's actually rested and properly more prepared at this point. Because at this point, it's looking like everybody was unprepared for this discussion in its entirety.
I'd like to concur with the previous senator's remarks. At a certain point, I don't think it'd be good to continue bringing up this debate. If I'm going to be bluntly honest, it seems like some of the questions, as noted with the amendment, was brought up in the first meeting I've been here and has been brought up every meeting since. And I'm going to be quite frank, I would rather spend 30 more minutes and actually finish this discussion than go through, kick the can down the road, then we can kick it down another week to actually finish this discussion. And at a certain point, if this bill is going to fail, I would rather have it just fail or pass, and we can move on with this. I think if we kick this down anymore, it feels like we're starting to almost question the efficacy of the body at this point.
President Bradley.
I think there might be some confusion when I entertained my original motion. This isn't a matter of time or people being tired or anything. It's a matter that there are some fundamental disagreements. And I think conversations that need to be had. I think what some of you said that is accurate, though, is the finish line is near. I suppose we disagree on what's at that finish line. I think it's further division and less Senate input.
Advisor Morgan?
I would just add a couple things. I agree with what President Bradley has. I gotta be here at 6:30 tomorrow morning. I'll stay here till 2 a.m. and you'll get to stay in the building because I'll be here. If that's what we need to do for you to do your work. However, this body as a full, not just the Senate, I'm talking as an organization, works well when the executive branch and the legislative branch, which is y'all, work together and talk about before ledge hits the floor. Because when in doubt, that's the last thing we do, right, is push ledge through. And from what I've seen and heard with the number of questions from the e-board, those conversations weren't had. So that's concerning that maybe y'all didn't get to hear from these people what some potential amendments could be made, right? to make it more functional. You don't want to or have the time to do that because they're looking at it, they didn't go to CRC, they, whatever, there's enough blame to toss around if we want to go there. But the reality is that even in this meeting, I've heard you use the word committee 5 or 6 times, talking about these groups or caucus or information groups or whatever that are, I don't want to use the wrong word again, right? So it's not quite there. It needs further development. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't think it's there yet for y'all to talk about. And if you take away the ability for you to amend it, you can't do that. So how are you supposed to do that except by kicking it down the road a week to be able to make amendments to it once you've had some time to have those conversations. It's not about exclusion. It's about having a good product when it's done that's going to work, which is the intent of the legislation. It's something that will work. So just something to think about. And I will not talk on the matter again. Promise.
We're still on the discussion on the motion of Senator Carter's motion. I said it wrong. Whatever. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we're going to roll call vote. Which is to, yes.
Can you clarify what voting aye and nay would be in this matter?
Vote aye would be to postpone this whole process 1 week. So next week we pick up right here, back in content changes. And then the week after that, so 2 weeks from now would be voting and discussion. A vote of nay is to continue.
Senator Bolt,
Nay.
Senator Carter,
Aye.
Senator Irwin,
Nay.
Senator Eskerl,
Aye.
Senator Gross,
Nay.
Senator Getzlaw,
Nay.
Senator Houston,
Aye.
Senator Calvin,
Nay.
Senator Patricus,
Aye.
Senator Punzel,
Aye.
Senator Purnell,
Nay.
Senator Schmidt,
Aye.
Senator Wheaton,
Nay.
Speaker Wilson.
Nay.
With a vote of 6 to 8, the motion fails, right? Yes. So we are still in discussion, or still in content changes. Or we're in content changes. I believe we're still in discussion on Senator Calvin's motion to change the majority to a 3/4 majority. If anyone has any discussion on that motion, or any points of information they would like to discuss. Senator Calvin?
Didn't we already vote on the 3/4, and I believe that passed, if I'm not mistaken, just a point of information.
Yeah, the 3 days.
And that's when I entertained the motion when there was no
Yeah.
active.
Okay.
Because it was the motion.
My fault. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I'm next. We are just in content changes then? Parliamentary inquiry?
Motion to add after the first, therefore be resolved, therefore be it further resolved that the process outlined in section 13 of the standing rules changes will take place immediately upon passage from the Senate.
Is there a second? Senator Wilson?
Second.
Discussion?
So this is just so we can establish priorities for this first semester. And when I say it'll begin, if you'll notice, the beginning of the process is that first meeting where the process is explained. So next week, upon passage, if it does pass, the speaker will walk you through, will once again review the entire process, and the following week, you will submit your proposals. So that's what it is. I would encourage everyone to just vote aye on this, because if in the end the legislation does pass, it would be good to just get right into it rather than letting it wait for the year. And then obviously if you don't want it to pass, you can vote no on the last thing, but this will just ensure that it makes sense in the event that it does pass.
Seeing no dissenting discussion, I will ask for unanimous consent to add to that. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that therefore be it further resolved, this clause is added. Content changes. I have one, which is I move to add an updated table of contents to the beginning of Appendix A, updated with the new Section 13, Section 14, and then Appendix F. Can I get a second? Senator Collins.
Second.
We're in discussion. We need to update that in the standing rules if this were to pass. So this lets us adjust that. Really. Senator Whitman?
Is it changing anything, and what would that be? What would that reflection be? Nothing?
It doesn't change anything about the content really itself. It just kind of adds the ability for us to update the table of contents. So with the first page, when you open your standing rules, table of contents where everything is. Let's find it. Seeing no dissenting discussion on this one, I will ask for unanimous consent to add that. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the table of contents is added. I have another content change, which is to add Senate priorities template name to Appendix F. If you can scroll down to Appendix F. Now, we just add Senate priorities template here. That's a motion. Can I get a second? Senator Wheatman?
Second.
Moving to discussion. Every other appendix in the standing rules has a name. So earlier today when I was looking where this would go, if it were to pass, I realized there's no name on this, so what the name? Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll ask for unanimous consent to add this. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, name is added. Any other content changes this evening? For this matter, yes. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into clerical edits. Do we have any clerical edits? Okay. I have one, which is to add the revised by dates and the revised by legislation coding to Section 8. And then add that this section is set to review statement under Section 13, because it's a new section. Right at the end. Can I get a second? Senator Wilson?
Second.
Move into discussion. All right. Seeing no other discussion, we'll ask for unanimous consent to make that change. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is added. As this is an S bill, we do not have discussion tonight. That is next week. So next week we will be doing discussion and then voting. We are at the end of this process.
Alrighty, with that, we move into announcements. Are there any announcements? I would entertain a motion to adjourn as well. Deputy Speaker Patrigas.
I retract that.
Okay, Parliamentarian Irwin.
I would just like to say that I know this process has been long and we're all tired, but this has been an incredible experience simply because so far in this semester, this has been the most senator work that we have seen. We have all gotten a chance to fulfill the roles we are elected to fulfill. So even no matter what the outcome, I think we should all be proud of having fulfilled our the roles we were elected to do.
Vice President Bain.
Oh my goodness. If you were a senator who took the oath today, please come see me promptly after, and we can get your information down for new placards. And once again, happy President's Day, everybody.
I'm going to adjourn. Wait a second, Deputy Speaker Patrigas.
Second.
Alrighty. We are moving to adjourn. Can I get a voice vote? Are there any opposed to adjourn? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, right here at 10:20.
There's an election tomorrow.
You're an elected senator. newly appointed, please come see me at the front of the room.
It's gonna be cold this week, so please take warm. Mine is 5 out there.
Like, woo.
I gotta go talk to them.
Throw my garbage.
Probably, yeah.
I didn't know, I meant to, but I didn't know the proper.
Oh. That's what's confusing. It is kind of like discussion.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I also.
No,
I felt like we were giving, I feel like we were giving the discussion that I was doing.
Yeah.
I kind
I felt bad scolding you, but I was worried about Sadie walking by, and I was like, oh my god.
Sorry, I didn't know you were like,
Did you find a time that I sent you?
260.
I just put Rufford out.
And I use.
Go.